Time to go. Going to do a Werewolf the Apocalypse Heart of the Forest playthrough. This time I'm going to go through trying to play all the way through as a pacifist. I haven't done this going through all the way as a pacifist yet. I've done going through as a Black Fury and did not go the pacifist route with this. So I'm going to try to do the Children of Gaia route this time. I'm going to make some choices that I feel are more in line with that, so we'll see what happens there, and we'll check it out. Let's see here. We're going to do a new game. It was a pretty cool text-based RPG that they did for the World of Darkness werewolf genre of it, or werewolf storyline. So really had a good time playing this. It only takes, really, like, if you kind of play through it fairly quick, where you're reading it but you're moving along, it only takes about 2 hours to do the whole playthrough on this. So I'm going to start the chapter. So we'll go through the tutorial just so folks that haven't seen it before can kind of see what it is. And here we go. It says, this is a game about rage and how it helps us do things that need to be done, as well as things that we later regret. Sometimes both. How do you feel about it? I'm going to say, well, I prefer to think before I act, because again, I'm going to be doing a Children of Gaia playthrough for this. So, you're the observant and cunning type. That's okay. There's no right path here, just your decisions and their consequences. So my options are, let's just follow the path and see where it takes us, and consequences, schmonsequences, I'm smarter than that. I'm going to go with let's see where the path takes us. So they gave me a dot in spiritual. So you have different attributes, and spiritual is one of them. The forest. The woods are full of stars. They flicker, come closer, run away, and they want me to chase them to play hide and seek. I observe. So I got inspiring and analytical for that, and I now have 2 dots of spiritual. I watch as they dance around the tree trunks, float up from the gusts of wind that shiver through the branches and disappear among the leaves. I'm going to turn the sound down real quick. Give me 1 second here, guys. I'm just going to turn that ambient, yeah. I'm going to cut that to about half so it's not drowning you guys out. Let's see here. Is there something better than better quality? Nope, better's the best. That's still a little too loud. There you go. See how that works. I don't know. It still sounds kind of the same to me, but we'll see. Hopefully that's not too loud for you guys. I have it lowered just a little bit. So there we go. Let's see how that works. Anyway, if it's too loud in chat and on the stream, let me know. Or if you don't hear any sound, let me know, and I'll mess with the sound levels. Okay, so I watch as they dance around the tree trunks, float up on the gusts of wind that shiver through the branches, disappear among the leaves. There are words in their dance, but I don't understand them, not yet. Then they bunch up and fly toward me like an arrow, rushing down there soon upon me. But just before the spear of light pierces my breast, they disappear, and the dark of the night returns. It says low rage right here. This is saying this is what happens because my rage isn't at higher dots. Okay, so certain things will trigger based on what you have up here: your health, your willpower, and your rage. So for low rage, I got, in the darkness, the spirits keeping the forest alive whisper about the enemy. I begin to move unnoticed, one with the night, and then I wake up. This game is based in Poland, by the way. It'll kind of go into it in a minute, but so some of the names I'm going to do my best to pronounce them, but my Polish pronunciation isn't great. Cold and alone, confused, I open my eyes. The forest around me is thick, dark, and reeks of decay to such an extent that it's hard to breathe. Do I want to... The smell fascinates me. I recognize this forest, or why am I here? I'm going to go with the smell fascinates me. The smell, both fascinating and repulsive, is everywhere. A memory stirs deep in my mind, something elusive from my earliest childhood. The tree trunks, wrapped tightly in dark-leaved ivy, are covered in ripples of lichen that are where the vines haven't taken hold. The thorny, leafless bushes at their base are overrun with nettles. The fungi radiate with a ghoulish, sickly green light. Dark, sponge-like mushrooms cling to the fallen trees. Ooh, something is rotten. I can't shake the feeling that something died nearby. I look down and see my hands covered in a dark substance. I'm naked. A sticky, glistening film of liquid is clinging to my skin. I can feel it on my face, in my hair, in my blood. I'm gonna hide. Cunning went up. I crouch down and plant my palms on the soil, my eyes darting back and forth. I feel like I'm being watched. There is a severed head right in front of me. Some choices are hard to make, and they strain your willpower. So I'll lose a willpower if I wince and touch it. Or I can lose some rage and be sick. I think I'm going to wince and touch it. Boop. Oh, lovely. Overcoming my disgust, I gently touch its wet hair and watch as the head topples over. Low rage. The face is contorted, the eyes bulging, the mouth open as though the head were still struggling for air. I look at it and start to laugh, and then the eyes open in the darkness. I'm going to go with naivety right now. Who is it? I can see their silhouettes, shades of jet black against the darkness. They smell of fur and moss and bloodied earth. Massive creatures, some with horns, some with antlers. Their eyes burn like small fiery windows into hell. I look at them and something wakes inside of me. I'm going to go with defiance. I ain't going to back down. My spiritual, so it went up too, and maybe my cunning. Lo, they tell me stories of their lost battles and dying hopes, and I say no. I tell them my stories of the enemy and how they are so stupid, so clueless, that we almost feel pity as we kill them. They listen and laugh. I laugh with them. In a moment of clarity, I almost understand what the forest wants of me. And then I wake up. If you guys have questions in the chat, go ahead and ask. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Might even do a playthrough in the future where you guys make the choices. Dreams. Maya, wake up. Low rage. I opened my eyes. My neck was stiff. I stretched lazily as I assessed where I was out of the corner of my eye. I wasn't in the forest anymore. I was in a bus. The sun streaming through the windows was making it hard to see. The girl next to me was touching my shoulder, disturbed. Low rage, I comforted her, or I laughed it off. I'm going to go with comforted her. Again, I'm trying to be on this playthrough, I'm trying to be kind of a friendly soul. She looked at me concerned. It's all right. I squeezed her hand to comfort her. She looked at me concerned. You were laughing like maniacally. I blinked. The memory of the dream was still there, and the taste of blood in my mouth. I was glad I wasn't alone. Thank you for coming with me, I said. The girl next to me smiled. I think we're almost there. Her name was Anya. We met a couple of weeks earlier on the orientation day. She was from Norway, a tall, broad-shouldered, calm person who wore her long hair in braids. Somehow, I'd managed to talk her into this crazy field trip across the land of my ancestors. We were there to study medicine, or she seemed excited. I'm going to go with Anya as friendly. Anya reached into her backpack and took out 2 apples. I'm really happy we decided to come here, she said. Yeah, I said, offering her some of my kabanosi, dried meaty sausages that were so much better than the original Polish ones back in the U.S. So, we call them, where I come from in Jersey, we call it kabasi or, kielbasa in other parts of the States. I was glad Anya had decided to come with me. I had problems keeping friends around and really needed one. So that's kind of like a theme you'll see in World of Darkness is a lot of times before people figure out who and what they are, they're outsiders. They're kind of antinomian. So that's fitting. They're keeping with that aesthetic of it. I did some searching, she said from over her phone, and this place is amazing. The last primordial forest in Europe. This trip was my idea. Our summer language course was starting in a few weeks, and I'd managed to talk Anya into skipping the tours of concentration camps and old churches and visiting. I'm going to look this word up because I've said it before and I've messed it up, and I don't want to do that. So I'm going to bring up my little Polish pronunciation guide. Okay, and that is
Białowieża.
Białowieża. Okay, so now I'll remember that. It's Białowieża. Visiting. All right. So, and I managed to talk Anya into skipping the tours of concentration camps and old churches and visiting Białowieża National Park with me instead. So far, it's beautiful, she said, her eyes smiling. But why are we here again? So before we go on, I just want to make clear I'm gonna do my best to get the pronunciations correct. Number one, out of respect for the language itself, the Polish language itself, because I don't want to just be some idiot who can't pronounce it and I'll just mumble it. So I'm going to actually look up the words that I don't understand the pronunciation and the meanings here, anything that pops up in Polish. My paternal grandmother was Polish, born in Poland. So I want to show a little respect to that as well, because I've done research over the years on my family history, but because of the time that my grandmother came over from Poland and the shoddy record keeping back then in Poland, back during, we're talking about the early 1900s, there's a lot of history lost there. Like her last name was Safransky, and when you look that up, like through Ancestry.com and whatnot, and you do the genealogical research, Safransky just means people of the saffron, which kind of it was supposed to speak to an area of where these Polish folk, these Poles lived, and that they were saffron farmers. However, when you get looking into it even more, there's tons of areas in Poland that there's people with the name Safransky, people of the saffron. So you can't really pin it down too well. And then her father's, my paternal great grandfather, his last name was Eskra. And when you look that up, that's like a Smith. That's a very common name in certain areas. It's kind of hard to find out and pin it down where it's from. And my grandmother, if you were to have asked her when she was alive, like, where'd you come from in Poland? She would just be like, Poland. Because she was very young when she came over. And like, okay, well, what did your father tell you when you came over from Poland? And her father died when she was very young, after they had just come over. He was a young man. They had just come over to the United States and settled in New Jersey. So she didn't really have a lot of those stories. They didn't have photo albums and all that stuff. They were poor folk. They were peasants when they came over. So there's virtually sadly, no history from that side of my family, it kind of sucks, because I would love to learn more about that. Her father grew up in a time when Poland was still coming out of trying to figure out who it was, because it was constantly being held by either the Russians or the Austrians or the Germans, and they would kind of tear the country apart. And there's different, I don't want to call it cultures, because Poland has a beautiful culture, but influences from these other national powers in the area that were trying to make Poland like their own little colony, like a buffer zone. So it's kind of interesting that they based this game there, because there is a lot of beauty and culture there that is, I think, frequently from those of us not in Europe, those of us in North America, we overlook like the beauty of Poland and the culture there, as well as the natural resources that are there. So anyway, just kind of getting off on a little side tangent with that, but all that to say, I will do my best to pronounce these words correctly. So we're going to be at Białowieża National Park is where this is kind of taking place, and one of the towns right near it. So occasionally you will see me look off to the side here. That's me looking at my pronunciation guide so I can make sure I'm getting these words correctly. If you have questions about the mechanics of the game, please feel free to ask the question. I will do my best to answer. The last time I played Werewolf the Apocalypse Tabletop Edition was probably almost 25 years ago. Was one of my favorite games as a teenager. I absolutely loved it. That, Vampire the Masquerade, Mage the Ascension, back in the old days, we loved those games. My friend Mike and I used to play the hell out of them. We had a group of guys that would come play with us. So this game here, for me, this little text-based, it has graphics, but it's pretty much a choose your own adventure RPG. This is great because this harkens back to that. And we're gonna probably try to get some guys together to eventually do like Tabletop Simulator, and maybe we'll do a werewolf campaign at some point. That might be pretty cool. So far it's beautiful, she said, her eyes smiling. But why are we here again? Good question. Białowieża. Okay. Why were we there? There being Białowieża, a small village in northeast Poland near the border with Belarus. It was famous for its national park, the very last European bison, and, according to a quick web search, occasional tensions between far-right troublemakers and the local Belarusian community. The most honest answer would have been, because I've been dreaming about this forest in Białowieża since I can remember, but people didn't understand when I said things like that. I looked her in the eyes. So there's some little mouse overs when you see this. It says Białowieża. See? Białowieża is a village in Poland's Podlasie province in the middle of the Białowieża forest, for which it is named. And so you can see as you mouse over, it gives you that. So that's cool that they do that in the game too. You get a little history. That's one of the great things about a game company. Hey Hank, how's it going, buddy? It's a good thing about a game company that you'll see will add these little details. So first of all, they realize that for North Americans and a lot of Westerners, Polish is a hard language. So they're going to put something in here where you can mouse over. I've got the phonetic spelling of Białowieża here, right? So again, beautiful country, Poland, and this takes place in a beautiful area of it. If you're actually interested in this game, I would advise going ahead and hopping on Google at some point and actually do a web search for Białowieża for the national forest there. There's some beautiful, beautiful pictures of it online. There's little videos and such as well. It's a real place. This isn't a made-up forest. It's real. So that's cool as well. And some of the events that are going on in here, it's obviously a fictionalized version of it, but it's kind of based on true events. There's going to be some things here involving like government corruption and over deforestation in that area, and that's kind of what the theme for this is, and that's actually based on things that are really happening. Okay, so that is always fun for a role-playing game too, right, where you can kind of grab into reality and pull it into your game, so it has that tie. It keeps you so much from jumping the shark, right? So I looked in her eyes. Now I've got 3 options here. All right. So I kept it simple so I wouldn't freak her out. I told her as much as I could. And then I have a low willpower option, which is I told her everything. Okay. So remember that on this playthrough, I said I'm going to try to do, because you can do multiple playthroughs of this game and have different endings every time. Okay. Because it's choose your own adventure. For this playthrough, I am going for the Children of Gaia route, which means I'm going to try to go with the non-confrontational, very pacifistic version of Maya Borodich. Okay, so if you see me making these decisions, it's not that I'm trying to be a weenie about it. I'm playing a character with this one. I'm trying a playthrough as a pacifist to see what happens in the ending when I do that. Okay, and what kind of challenges that presents at the end. So I'm gonna go with this, and I'm gonna say that as her personality, I kept it simple so I wouldn't freak her out. Okay, so that's what I'm going to go with. The most honest answer would have been because I've been dreaming about the forest in Białowieża since I can remember, but people didn't understand when I said things like that. I looked into her eyes. I'm looking for my roots. I kept it simple so I wouldn't freak her out. What I didn't tell her was even more important. I knew my family was from here. None of my relatives spoke about it, though. There were a lot of things that weren't spoken about in my life. Strange dreams that plagued me. Half-forgotten tales about forests and wolves that I'd heard before my mom took me, ran away, and cut off all contact with my dad and his family. I waited for her to respond. Anya fell silent for a moment. Okay, so because Anya's friendly with us, we have this. Okay, and you can see on that mouse over there, it says variant indicates that this version of the story happened because of your current stats. Your stats. Remember, every option you take in this, every path you take has a consequence, and it steers the story. There's something like 144,000 different paths this story can take in this game. So for a short little 2-hour game, you can play this through by making different choices constantly and have new endings and new options. So it's kind of cool that they got that, right? So Anya fell silent for a moment, and because she's friendly, I think it's great that you've come from such a magical place, she smiled. The last ancient forest in Europe, thousands of years old. I wasn't sure if I was fond of that magic, but it was hard to ignore, and that was precisely why I needed to do something, anything about my future, that damn forest and my weird-ass family. I had a clear goal in mind. Here we go. So I had to face the forest. I had to learn the truth about my roots, or I had to figure out my own destiny. I'm going to go with I had to figure out my own destiny. Okay, that's what I'm going to make as my focus, is my destiny. I'm trying to figure out getting some inner focus and inner clarity. I wasn't there by mistake. I'd planned this trip for months with a clear goal in mind. My grandfather's cryptic remarks, the strange dreams, all the drama with my dad's family. Something was coming for me, something big. I wasn't sure what to believe. I wasn't sure if I believed in destiny. See, goal, right there on the screen, it says goal, mystery, fulfill your destiny. That's a common thing. You have to do that to complete the game. You have to fulfill certain destiny moments. I was ready to face whatever fate had in store for me, but now I wasn't so sure if it had been a good idea. Welcome home. Białowieza looked like an overexposed photo of a village with the contrast turned all the way up. It was a hot, sleepy day on a hot, sleepy street, and everything, the old trees, the yellowed grass, the weathered wooden houses, the fences, seemed almost normal. Everything except the shadows. They were sharp, as though they were freshly printed with the darkest of inks. And they moved. For a second, I could have sworn they'd moved, but then I realized it was just a black cat walking down the sidewalk. When it saw me, it stopped in its tracks. I decided to ignore it. I watched it with suspicion, or I tried to pet it. I'm a pacifist. It's an animal. I'm going to try to pet it. I'm a cat chick, right? Here, kitty, kitty, I said, squatting and reaching toward the cat. I have low rage. It rammed me affectionately with its head and started rubbing against my legs, totally ignoring the outstretched hand. Hey, Maya, Anna said, looking at me surprised. Didn't you say your friend would be waiting for us? But he wasn't there, and the cat was still staring at me. Let's go. Anya put on her backpack. I'm tired and I really, really need to find a toilet. For a moment, I was tempted to just get out of the sun and worry about missing my friend later. So I can go with my low rage, and I decided I didn't need him, but the meeting was just too important. This here seems a little bit crass for my playthrough that I'm doing, right? So I'm going to go with, but the meeting was just too important. So I think I'm going to have to make Anya wait on the toilet. Let's just wait a little longer, I said. I don't have his number, and we really need to meet up with him. His name was Bartek. I'd met him online while researching Białowieza. The man knew everything there was to know about local history. I asked him to check some stuff for me. I wasn't ready to tell her that the stuff was old legends and prophecies. I hope he's found something. I really need to pee. Anya said it like I was a 5-year-old and not a very bright one. If someone's got to pee, they got to pee. I'm going to cave. Okay, let's go. I grabbed my backpack and stormed off, angry at Bartek, Anya's tiny bladder, and the creepy cat. Bed and breakfast. Białowieza had a few hotels and hostels, but the preferred form of accommodation was bed and breakfasts. That's where we stayed. I found one that was nice, clean, and had good reviews. We had a room on the second floor with a huge window and a great view of the forest. We dropped off our stuff and freshened up a bit. Maybe we should have waited for your friend, Anya asked, concerned. Didn't we just say that? And she kept pushing about the P option. Maybe we should have waited for your friend, Anya asked, concerned. I shrugged. I'll find him sooner or later. Before you go, check out your character sheet. Look for it in the upper right-hand corner of the screen. You can find a load of useful information about Maya, her background, personality, goals, and so on there. You can also check who your friends and who your enemies are. Białowieza was a quaint tourist town. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to go to the character sheet real quick so we can go through this, okay? So, fairly typical World of Darkness, White Wolf style character sheet. So info, name is Maya Bordich. I'm 24 years old. I'm a student, and I'm American. So, I have no bravery yet. Inspiring, 1 dot. Analytical, 1 dot. Spiritual, I'm more spiritual than anything right now. And cunning is starting to move up. These change as you go through the story. Okay, you'll increase depending on your the actions you take. Mind and body condition is healthy. Goal right now, fulfill your destiny, right? Pursue to gain willpower. So the more of my destiny goals I hit, my willpower will go up, and I can spend willpower. We'll talk about that in a minute. Relations. Anya is friendly, and my family is complicated. So we've got that. So it's June 20th during the day. The moon is in waxing gibbous, okay? So that means it's coming up, right? You can see it on the little thing there. So health is full at 3 right now. Health is your life force. When your health goes down to 0, you are impaired and unable to perform hard physical actions. For willpower, There's a pool of points that you can spend to perform actions that are difficult for Maya. Particularly, willpower will be used to prevent the effects of high rage, so there's a balance between the two. You regain willpower when you pursue your goal. When your willpower goes down to 0, you are impaired and unable to perform hard mental and social actions. And then rage. Rage describes your supernatural anger. Be careful when you rage. High rage allows Maya to overcome many obstacles, but also makes her aggressive and hard to control. So rage is a key thing in Werewolf, like we were talking about a little while ago. Werewolf the Apocalypse. Rage is what empowers a werewolf to fight for what it believes is right. Okay? So that rage is what will drive you toward that, like it said, your supernatural anger, that goal that you have that is part of your destiny, fighting for your whatever your particular goals are for this period. So it's good to have it, to spend it, but you don't necessarily want high rage all the time, because if you're at 3 dots in this, some of your actions are like you're constantly angry and frustrated, and you got to find a way to release it. Okay, so you got to find a happy balance with that, or else it can totally steer the story in a quite violent and confrontational way. So, Białowieża is a quaint tourist town, but I had other things in mind. The lay of the land. So here's our little map of the area, okay? So, Białowieża town and the forest. I've got 2 options now. I had a clear goal in mind. The land was calling me, and I wanted to understand my destiny. Anya went with me, okay? So, I can go... Indicates a change in Maya's current stats. Okay. So, we can go to the forest I dreamed about, or the town my ancestors lived in. So, we have a choice here. We're already in town. I think we're going to go ahead and hit the town for a little bit. That's my husky barking in the background. Serendipity. As we walked through town, Anya nudged me and pointed at a tall, broad-shouldered, freckled guy standing at the bus stop with a lost expression on his face. I remembered his face from the pictures on social media. It was the friend who'd stood me up earlier. I was glad to see him. Bartek? Sympathetic. Bartek? I waved my hand and smiled. Sorry I missed you earlier. Maya, what are you doing here? He blurted out with surprise when he saw me. I was sure you were coming on the later bus. We started walking and talking. His accent was broad and East European. I flooded him with questions. Anya liked him, or I caught him looking at me. I'm going to go with Anya liked him. Anya took an immediate liking to him, I could tell. I always could smell romance in the air. We walked along the only street in the village nearing the center, if you could call it that. Every house had a garden, and the air was dense with the fragrance of flowers. I took a deep breath. Goal for my destiny. So, what have you found in the way of local folk tales / creepy prophecies / weird shit, I asked. Bartek shook his head. Nothing, absolutely nothing. Sorry. He was avoiding my eyes. A trickle of sweat ran down his temple. So right now, if you see, my rage is at 2, right? And I'm getting a balanced option, which is good. In my opinion, it's good. He was clearly lying to me, but why? Come on, man, I said. You wrote to me that you'd found something, but he just clammed up. You know what? I think you should drop it. I stopped. I can unleash all my charm. I felt hurt, or he was scared of something. I'm going to try to get my my cunning going a little bit, and I'm going to go with unleashed all my charm. I turned to Bartek and looked him straight in the eyes. I put a hand on his chest. I really had no plan after that, so I panicked and felt a sudden urge to do something unnecessary and over the top. I'm going to push it. See, but this might alienate Anya, because she's obviously taking a liking to him. So here we go. Now we start. You've got diverging paths, right? I don't want to go lower willpower. So I looked him deep in the eyes again. I leaned toward him and looked him deep in the eyes. I hoped he'd seen how important it was to me, but he just blanched and jerked back. I didn't give up. I got inspiring too now. Tell me what you found, I asked, not giving up. The game tracks your decisions on how Maya approaches problems. They will accumulate and gradually reveal what kind of person she is deep in her heart. The story changes to reflect Maya's personality. We just talked about that. Sorry. Storytelling makes the mouth dry. Well, he brushed his forehead with the back of his hand. I did ask. I started with the old people here. I told them that my friend from the States was looking for her roots and wanted to know about the place her family came from. You know the drill. At first, people were very, receptive. I waited for the other shoe to drop. And then I mentioned your name. He shook his head. I started to lose my temper. I can go up in rage. I urged him to continue. I'm going to go with I needed a moment to calm down. I want to lower my rage a little bit. See, that spent a dot of rage. We walked in silence for a long time. Finally, I nodded and he continued his story. One of the old men here told me to go to hell. The other spat on the ground and his wife crossed herself. For a moment, he looked younger and smaller. And then my own grandmother told me to stop asking. She said something else as well. I tensed up. What? I asked. She told me to pray for you. Suddenly, the sweet golden afternoon wasn't so sweet and golden anymore. Who was I? I felt shivers run down my spine, or low rage. I laughed. I'm going to go with the shivers down my spine. My grandma would pray for me all the time when I was little. I felt shivers run down my spine. We walked in silence, but my mind was in overdrive. People didn't want to talk, and that could only mean one thing. I was on the right track, so I'm going to gain some willpower for that. So I'm progressing toward my goal. My pulse quickened and I tensed up like a hound that smelled blood. I was on the right track. Every time you learn or do something significant that brings you closer to your goal, you regain willpower. I was ready to see some sights. Time to see the sights, I nodded at Bartek. Show me everything this place has to offer. We walked through the village, bathed in the sharp rays of the summer sun. It was a lazy afternoon, disturbed only by the occasional passing car throwing up clouds of dust that hung in the air long after the vehicle was gone. Anya was walking close to Bartek, asking him about every little detail in the village. People were relaxing or working in their yards. Dogs were barking, and every cat we passed froze to look at us. Low rage option. People seemed quite friendly, though. Some of them smiled at us as we passed by, and every once in a while, we stopped for some small talk with the people who knew Bartek. So I got 3 answers. I expected fewer stares. The cats behaved strangely, or it was just a tourist village. I'm going to go with cats behaving strangely. What's with the cats? I asked as we passed a tabby who stopped in the middle of the sidewalk to meow at us. I don't know. They're cats. Maybe they just want to make up for the villagers' manners, Bartek shrugged. You know, some people are wary of newcomers. So I can go with a higher rage and say xenophobic jerks. I can go with lower rage, which is, yeah, tourists can be assholes, or I was curious why. I'm going to continue with this curious bent that I'm doing. Why? I asked candidly. It's complicated. Bartek scratched his neck, embarrassed by the topic. There's a small conflict around the forest, you know, and it's attracting some weird people. Activists, reporters, bored rich kids, he said as though his dad didn't own multiple businesses. People like that, and they're getting on the locals' nerves. I noticed Anya frowning, or fair enough. I'm going to go with noticed Anya frowning. Anya looked skeptical. I looked the conflict up online, she said, and it didn't look so small. It looked pretty important, actually. For a moment, Bartek looked like he was lost for words. Well, you're not one of those crazies, and you're, like, almost local, he smiled. So what would you like to see in the village of your ancestors? He spread his arms as if to show me all the splendor the village had to offer. What do you suggest? The village. Cats were watching my every move as we walked along the empty streets. It's interesting. My last playthrough, I don't remember all this stuff about the cats. I guess it's just whatever choices I made in the beginning have kind of changed a little bit. So we can go to the old cemetery, family graves, mysteries of the past, village center, new friends, hidden tensions, or abandoned railway, lost hopes, strange dreams. I'm going to go with the abandoned railway first. Train spotting. Ugh, no heroin. Bartek wants to show us the most picturesque spot in the area, said Anya. Maybe that's not the right word, he said, frowning. Well, it's not like it's that beautiful, but it has, an atmosphere, a climate. Did he mean cool or ambiance? I'm going to go with ambiance. Ambiance? Anya said at the same moment as I, and we laughed. Ambiance, Bartek smiled, visibly relieved. I meant ambiance. We ended up on some abandoned tracks. Low rage. We soon left the village behind and ended up on some abandoned railway tracks. So this is where the magic happens, I grinned, pointing at empty bottles and used condoms strewn along the tracks. But with the slow, winding river a stone's throw away and the long, drooping branches of the old trees shading the unused railway, that place really was picturesque. The bees buzzed around us, the birds sang like there was no tomorrow, and the fragrance of herbs hung thick in the air. My head was spinning. So I got my options here, which are, why was the track abandoned? It all felt unreal, or low rage. A perfect moment for a cold beer. I'm going to go with it all felt unreal. My spiritual went up. I'm at 4 for spiritual now. I wasn't sure if the heat or the smell of the herbs, but the whole scene seemed unreal. The river slid by to our left like a giant snake, bees zigzagged through the air and sank, and trees watched us. Every nook and hollow in their trunks sheltered a prying eye. I'm going to go ahead and spend a willpower point here, because I opened myself up to the experience. Again, I'm trying to make this playthrough of Maya more hippy-dippy, more child of Gaia, okay? So that would be more something I can see her doing at this moment, is kind of tilting her head back, closing her eyes, taking a deep breath, and just kind of drawing it all in and seeing what the universe is telling her while she's standing there. So I expend my willpower point. I took a deep breath and opened my mind. For a moment, the world flickered, and I saw it all differently. Every plant, every stone, every cloud, and every insect was a person. The world was alive and aware of its own existence. The railway cut it in half. A rusty, oily brand burned on the skin of the earth, covered in iron cobwebs and dark, oozing stains. I looked up and saw a bright light shining from among the trees where we were headed. If you've never played Werewolf the Apocalypse or read any of the novels or source books, it is very Reclaim the Earth, very eco-warrior type of underlying theme, okay? You don't have to play every role-playing game as it's intended, of course, but that is a big thing. You know, you have cairns, which are centers of power on the earth that werewolves will protect with their groups. Everything is kind of centered around the quote-unquote good werewolves, the werewolves defending nature, versus the like Black Spiral Dancers, the evil ones who have succumbed to chaos and disorder and the destruction of the earth. So that's kind of the worm that eats the earth, and the weaver that tries to bind it all together with technology and civilization. So that's kind of an underlying theme, and they're bringing that out now that, you know, it's more earthy. I blinked. Then I blinked and the vision was gone. When we entered the dense copse, we noticed a woman standing among the trees. She stood in the spot where I saw the shining light. "Hello, Bartek," she said. She was stunning. The woman looked like she was in her late 30s and was the most beautiful person I'd ever seen. She had a perfect hourglass figure, long braids, and the most stunning cheekbones. Her eyes, slightly slanted, were a weird shade of blue, deep, almost purple. They seemed familiar, and she was looking straight at me. I can either go with rage, it was a challenge. I can go with less rage, I took a step back, or her eyes were hypnotizing. I'm going to go with... I want to get back up to rage balance, so I'm going to go ahead and take it as a challenge. I saw a challenge in her eyes, and I felt hair on my neck stand on end. "Hello, Elisabeta Danilovna." Elisabeta Danilovna. "Hello, Elisabeta Danilovna," answered Bartek. I could hear something in his voice. Was it fear, respect, anger? I couldn't place it. So for us Westerners, that's not even fair. For us North Americans, speaking to someone that we meet, like Hank in the chat room here, I would probably either call him Mr. whatever his last name is, or Hank, right? So I would call him by one of the two. However, in Eastern Europe, they do tend to, there's like three levels of formality when you address someone. Like if you are just meeting someone for the first time, or they're a person in a position of respect, you address them by their full name every time. Okay, so Elisabeta Danilovna is kind of either he's showing respect and deference, or they're not familiar with each other. So you got those three layers of familiarity. Then there would be like Elisabeta, which is maybe they work together and they see each other on the daily or something like that, or they're neighbors. But then there's also familiar, like an intimate familiar. That doesn't necessarily mean sexual, but like a family member or someone you care about. And that means he might call her like Elisa. There might be a certain term like I'm trying to think of a good example. Like in Russia, like if someone's name is Alexander, I'm just going to use that. I know it's not really, a Russian name, but there would be like, they would call him like Alexander Danilovna, right? Would be the highest form of respect. Then after that would be Alexei, if you knew him well. And then maybe there's like Alexania. And I know that's not the right way to do that. The right, I'm kind of like making a pejorative of it, but it becomes a more familiar thing, a more pet name. Okay. So the whole point is by him saying, Elisabetta Danilovna, it is definitely, like it said, I could hear something in his voice. Was it fear, respect, anger? Any of those three are appropriate for that level of addressing a person in an Eastern European setting. So she smiled. I'm Lisa, she said, looking at Anya and then again at me. And you must be Bartek's pen pal, I assume, the one who's searching for her ancestry. So you see right there, she went from Elisabetta, from Bartek, to using a more familiar term, a more North American, a more Western term of like my name's Lisa, right? So she actually she did the shortened version of her name. By doing that, she's already giving permission to the people she's speaking to address her that way. So she's making an effort to to bring it a little closer. So my options here: how did she know? And we exchange pleasantries. I'm gonna go with I've been doing the curious thing, but I'm gonna exchange pleasantries simply because I did get standoffish with her at first, or I felt standoffish. Lisa asked whether I liked it here, what I'd seen, and how long we'd been planning to stay. Do you mind if I join you? She asked. I'd rather walk alone. I'm balanced now. I noticed Bartek getting tense, or sure. I didn't mind. I'm going to go with the Bartek balance. There's a reason why I did that. I wanted to make sure I'm seeing things with enough rage that I can make good decisions based on my gut, but at the same time, not just blind rage. So what's the story with you two? I asked Bartek. She's from around here, he shook his head, but she helps with the protests. You know, Lisa turned to me, the protests against the logging that his father so eagerly promotes. Bartek winced and snapped. I guess. Sorry, shouldn't we coexist with the forest? That means taking what we need to survive just as everything does. 6,000 trucks of wood isn't taking what we need, kid. He threw me a glance, looking for help. Excuse me 1 second, I have to cough. Pardon me. Logging in a national park? She had a point, and people needed to have jobs. I'm going to go with logging in a national park. How can they log trees in a national park? I asked. Just so you know, they do it in the United States too. This isn't like a Polish thing. They don't, Bartek said. It's just near the park's border. If it was about local action, there wouldn't be a problem, Anya chimed in, but it isn't. Giant corporations are at work here with heavy machinery. Ask your friend about his father's money and his clients, Lisa shrugged. Bartek stormed away. I shrugged and followed him. Lisa followed me. We walked the narrow path. The path was too narrow for all of us to walk together, so at some point I found myself walking with Lisa. She would squat from time to time and collect some herbs. So you're looking for your roots, she asked after a while. Why? I needed to know the whole story. My balanced option, I couldn't resist a mystery, or I had dreams. I'm going to tell her about the dreams. I don't know why, but I feel it, and that's increased. Lisa just went sympathetic, and my spirituality went up. I've been having strange dreams, I answered, and I know they have a hidden meaning. Sorry, I stuttered. I know they have a hidden meaning. You're wiser than you look, she said, surprised. Sit down with me. She nestled among the roots of an old tree, reached into her basket, and took out a blunt. Let's have a smoke and I'll tell you a story. She noticed when I hesitated. You need to hear it. I took the blunt. Tangled roots. Lisa let out a cloud of smoke and started talking. From what I've learned from Bartek's grandma, you're asking the wrong questions about the wrong people. I decided to cut to the chase as my increasing rage, or I can lower my rage, her voice was so soothing, or what should I be asking? I'm going to go with the middle column. I'm not even sure what I'm looking for, I admitted. This is a tainted land, girl, she continued. So much blood was spilled that Pushcha, Pushcha almost lost her mind. I'm going to look up that word, as I told you I would, whenever I find something that I don't understand. Puszcza. Pushcha. Okay, I was pronouncing it right. I think it means forest, land. Let's see. Pushcha? Pushcha, one of the words for forest. Okay, yeah. Polish had lots of those, but she used it in a weird way. Why do you call the forest Pushcha? Isn't Las the right word? I call her Pushcha because it's her proper name, she huffed. Las is to Pushcha what dog is to a wolf. Domesticated, enslaved, used. Pushcha is the primeval forest. One untouched by humans. Primal, strong and feared. There was admiration in her voice, and I realized that the words sounded like the rustle of leaves, like the wind. Pushcha. As I was telling you, Pushcha almost went mad, and it's not wise to wake the spirits, especially now. I'm going to go with what spirits? You mean the dead? I asked. She looked at me with those uncanny eyes. Her gaze was almost unbearable, hard, with anger smoldering somewhere deep within it, ready to jump at my throat, and then suddenly something changed. Lisa sighed heavily. You have no idea, do you? About the past? No, I admitted. All I know is that my grandfather was born here and that his aunt was a healer and an herbalist. Her eyes lost focus, as though she was looking at something only she could see. In 1939, when the war broke out, first came the Germans, then the Russians. You know, they actually worked together. Stalin never forgot that he was beaten by the Poles in 1920. She shot me a glance. I nodded politely. I didn't really care, but I nodded politely. Oh, you have no idea what I'm talking about. It doesn't matter, really. She took a drag. Anyway, many millions of lives later, Stalin and Hitler stopped sleeping together, so to speak, and the Germans came, and then the Russians again, and then there were the forest soldiers. The forest part got my attention. I nodded so she would continue. The forest part got my attention. They started as Polish soldiers, but then the war ended and they became guerrillas to fight the Russian occupation, and then they ended up as desperate bandits, she sighed. For the people who lived here, they were all the same. Germans, Russian, forest soldiers. They killed, they maimed, they tortured and burned villages. It didn't matter what language they spoke. She looked sad. Do a little empathy here. I'm sorry, I touched her arm. I didn't know that it was all so tangled. My great-grandparents were from here, she sighed. After the war, there were some changes, and my whole family was sent to Siberia to die. My grandmother was the only one who survived. She met a Buryat shaman, and here I am. But your story is tangled with all of this. She looked straight at me. There's a lot buried in your past, and it weighs on your future. Then the weed hit me. And, of course, that was the moment when the weed finally hit. The stuff was powerful, and for a moment I wondered if she hadn't spiked it. So I have a choice. I can go with rage, what had she done, or I can lose a willpower, and I tried to stay focused. This is really going to knock me down in my ability to do stuff later, but I don't want to lose focus right now, so I'm going to have to... I don't want to lose my rage right now. I'm going to try to stay focused. So now I'm impaired on willpower. I focused and understood that the strange feeling came from within. It was like a long-forgotten dream, like an ancient memory suddenly brought to life. I let it in. Now, if you notice, they intentionally got me to this point right now where I either had to go max rage or no willpower. So I'm kind of being funneled in one direction in the storyline right now. So if you've ever played a tabletop version of Werewolf the Apocalypse, or really any other game, a good game master will do that. They will kind of, if they need to keep the story on track, they will find a way to gently funnel the players back into the main channel of what's going on, so they don't either get too far ahead in the story and ruin the plot line, or make the story end too quick, or if they're just totally going down a rabbit hole and they need to get them back on track because they're on some completely superfluous track, right? So this game obviously has that built into it. The AI of it, as you will, kind of is trying to steer me back on a path. Maybe I was going down a rabbit hole a little too much. Oh, let me get my stream back up so I can see if anybody has any questions. Again, if anybody has any questions, feel free to ask. Or if you think I make a mistake on this path and you're like, man, you should have went the other way. I want to hear about it. So we're sitting around the fire deep in the pushcha. The others are sleeping. I listen to the whisper of the leaves. The forest is speaking to me, demanding action. There's obviously some kind of a dream. It wants me to be its revenge, or I find no joy in the task. I'm going to go with I find no joy in the task. I understand what has to be done, even if I find no joy in it. Soon I will wake the others and tell them the plan. Tomorrow we're going to burn a village. I sit by the fire and listen to wolves howling to the moon, weeping for their slain brothers and sisters. When I came to my senses, Lisa was still looking at me. So, I can go with I got defensive, I ran it over in my mind, or it was a lot to take in. I'm going to go with I ran it over in my mind. I want to be a little more cerebral about this one. This answer. If I understood what you're saying, I looked at her, something from my family's past casts a shadow on my future? She shrugged. I've told you everything I know. If you want more, talk to my girlfriend. We'll be at the logging site tomorrow. Yeah, good idea. So I got my willpower point back. So, hint, my grandfather's deeds might have shaped my future. I progressed in my goal. I will, I said. Now I finally knew now I finally knew who and what to ask. There you are, Bardic waved to me. I thought I'd lost you. I said my goodbyes, and Lisa and I went back. All right, so we did the abandoned railway. The village. The bison statues were watching me with their creepy painted eyes, as though they knew me. I want to go to the family grave site now. It's still the afternoon. Matters of the soul. So, we have quite a few churches here, Bardic explained, as we walked down the road. 2 Orthodox, 1 Catholic, and even 1 Baptist church, he said as though it were something uncommon. Well, it's Poland. So I asked about it. Was there a synagogue, or it seemed like a lot of churches? I'm going to go ahead and ask about the synagogue. And a synagogue? I knew a part of my mom's family was Jewish. He shifted his weight uncomfortably. There aren't any Jews here anymore. Any Lutheran churches? Anya asked. I don't think so. Bardic shook his head and he led us to a small wooden church surrounded by a cemetery. Anyway, even though we have all these churches, there's only 1 cemetery. The church was Orthodox, but the graves were a mishmash of styles and faiths. Catholic, Orthodox, atheist, everyone resting together. So I have a choice here. I can go with an increasing rage choice, a lessening rage choice, or a neutral one. The increasing rage choice is Bardic looked like he didn't approve. There's something poetic about it, was my lessening rage. And then the place reminded me of a forest. I'm going to go ahead with the forest option. It's like in the forest, I said, looking at the spruces growing among the graves. It's full of death. What's fallen stays where it fell. There's all kinds of trees, bushes, and animals, and life is growing out of it all. Bartek didn't look convinced. Yeah, maybe. He looked at the cemetery, and for a moment he seemed lost in his thoughts. All of my family lies here, he said. I mean, the ones that are dead. Hey, what do you think? What do you think happens when you die? So now we have 3 options. Only memory remained, I hope for something fair, or you left an echo. For her, I'm going to go with left an echo. And again, my spiritual increased, so I'm at 6 now. You echo for some time, or ripple. You know, I think that everything in this world has a trace. I was looking for the right word. An aura, emanation, call it what you want, and it doesn't dissolve right away. Bartek seemed unsure. Is that like a New Age thing? He looked over the cemetery fence. Well, anyway, this is it. The spiritual heart of Białowieza. We can go see something else if you like. So that's where we stood. I wanted to go in, and he was clearly scared to let me enter the cemetery. I'm going to go with balanced. I went in. Are you kidding me? I didn't come here to look at something. I came here to look for something, I said, opening the gate. Bartek shifted uncomfortably. I don't know if that's a good idea. He was hiding something. You found it, my family's grave. Maybe? So what are we waiting for? Anya smiled at him. He mumbled something and led us through the labyrinth of graves to the far end of the cemetery. I have a balanced option. The walkways were narrow, and I could tell Bartek was having a hard time finding the way. It wasn't that he was stalling, he just generally wasn't sure where to go, especially when we got to the older part of the cemetery. At some point, we saw a woman, tall, broad-shouldered, and long-legged. with gray dreadlocks pinned to the crown of her head. She must have been in her late 40s or early 50s. She was marching through the walkways with fury in her eyes. Bartek quickly stepped between the graves to get out of her way. I have an increasing rage option. I walked on ignoring her, balanced, I didn't move, or I could lessen my rage and did the same. I'm going to go with balanced again, and I didn't move. I didn't see any reason to move out of someone's way, so I didn't. Are you lost? Asked the woman in Polish, looking at me with surprising concern. I'm going to ask her for directions. Actually, I'm looking for an old grave, I said. My family lived here, and what's the name? Borodich, I answered with perfect Polish accent. Young Borodishonia. I'm totally butchering that one, I'm sure. Borodishonia. She used an antiquated feminine form of the name. She shook her head. I'm just coming back from there. Go to the end of here, turn left, and go to the far corner of the wall. She looked at me in a funny way. I have what was her problem. I thanked her, and why was she here? I'm going to thank her. Oh, thank you. Bartek didn't seem to know the way. I think it was only then that she noticed him. Oh, it's you, she said with barely hidden disdain. Well, I'd better get going. See you around, I guess. With that, she left, followed by Bartek's hostile gaze. I'm going to ask Bartek about her. Olga. Who's that? I asked, watching the woman leave. Bartek winced. Oh, that's Olga. She's a local activist. She left Bialovesia. There we go with the pronunciation. She left Bialovesia when she was 18 or something and returned a few years back with the notion that she was going to change this place. We continued to the far end of the cemetery. There, seemingly forgotten and covered in moss, was a lonely grave. It was damaged. I'm going to turn the sound up just a little bit because I'm noticing that you guys can't really hear the ambient sounds. So I'm going to increase that a bit. And I'll even increase the music volume a little bit. Let's see how that works. There we go. Okay, if that's overwhelming, please let me know. But you guys should be hearing like a rain and occasional church bells. Excuse me. Oh, that's just all right. We've already been through that. We continued to the far corner of the cemetery. The seemingly forgotten, covered in moss, was a lonely grave. The tombstone was broken deliberately. Someone had obviously smashed it with a hammer. The plaque was also damaged. Someone had tried to scratch out the name, but the letters were still visible. There was a circle of coarse salt around the grave. I'm sorry, Bartek sighed. I didn't want you to see that. So my options are increased rage. I needed to know who did this. Balanced with a loss of willpower would be I looked around carefully, and was it because of me? I'm actually going to go ahead and expend willpower here because I want to investigate this. I looked at the scene. The circle around the grave was broken, and the disturbed soil where someone had kicked the salt away was fresh. Probably Olga? What was going on? I might not have enough willpower to explore this too much. I felt overwhelmed and confused. What was going on here? I'm going to go with, was Olga part of it? Olga was here just before us. She must have noticed the salt and the broken tombstone. Was she the one who broke the circle? Anya squatted and looked at the plaque. I can't read it. The letters are all wrong. She glanced at Bartek. Is it Russian? And he said Belarusian. The same letters, different language, he explained. There are a lot of them here before the war. Bartek put his hands in his pockets. So, you don't know anything about your dad's side of the family? He asked me cautiously. Whatever happened at least 70 years ago, and someone still remembers. I'm going to go with he had a point. I don't know them. My mom left my dad when I was just a kid, so I don't remember much, I admitted. And she kept me away from them. She doesn't even know I'm here. I didn't tell her that I was visiting Bialovesia. So my balance from rage, maybe he was abusive? Said Anna carefully. Perhaps she wanted to protect you? Yeah, I guess. I'm going to look at the grave a little more. I looked at the grave for the last time. My family's name looked strange, written in the unfamiliar Belarusian letters. As we were leaving, I was thinking. I was on to something. So I gained another willpower point. I gained back my willpower point for pushing the story forward. There is something unnatural about my family, and me coming to Bialovesia has stirred some old demons. I just had to find out what my ancestors were doing here. Maybe that would show me what I was destined to do. With that thought, we left the cemetery. So we've explored the abandoned railway, the old cemetery, And it says, the day was hot and beautiful, yet I couldn't stop thinking about the devastated grave. Still the afternoon, we're going to go to the village center. A bird of many colors. This is such a nice village, exclaimed Anya as we walked along the quiet street. Nothing moved. The heat was stifling. I can go with I was bored without more rage, I enjoyed the walk, or the village was really quaint. I'm going to go with the middle option. It's quaint, I carefully admitted. Is that a nice way of saying it's a shithole? Bartek made a disgusted face and we burst out laughing. I was thirsty. Let's get something to drink, I proposed. I'm parched. The local store was a large mini-mart with all kinds of goods, from beer and vegetables to notebooks and pens. There was a bench near the entrance, and on it were a few local drunks. My balanced option is, I prepared myself for a confrontation, but nothing happened. They threw me an appraising glance, murmured something, and let us be. I'm going to go with I assessed the threat. And I got a point in analytical for that. They're drunk and no threat, I said, assessing the situation. We can always walk away, and if they try to stop us, all it'll take is a firm push, 1 or 2 kicks, and then we can make a run for it. Why do you even plan things like that? Anya shook her head in disbelief. My stepdad sent me to a self-defense course when I was 12, I shrugged. It helped me with my anger management issues. We spent some time inside browsing the Latvian, Lithuanian, and Belarusian goods. Why was there almost nothing Polish here? And who in their right mind drinks coriander soda? I was putting the soda back on the shelf when I heard a commotion coming from outside. Loud noises. Some slurs, some curses, and a clear, mockingly polite, I'm so sorry, darlings, but I don't understand. Do you like my skirt? Ah, fuck, Bartek murmured under his breath. I wanted in, I looked outside, or I tried to stay out of it. I'm going to look outside, but I am a pacifist. This playthrough, I am playing a pacifist, so... I looked outside. There was someone standing next to the drunkard's bench. They were definitely not local. The person was old. Not helplessly granny old, but old with deep wrinkles and a narrow mouth. They had the unisex grace of a tired heroin-preserved rockman. Their shoulder-length, disheveled hair completed the look. I'm going to go with they looked out of place. They looked like someone had teleported them here from a different planet. They had a clean-shaven eyes highlighted with eyeliner. Their nails were painted in a bright blue. They wore heavy army boots, an outrageously red skirt, a tank top, and lots of leather jewelry. On their bag, there were pins, lots of pins, all kinds of LGBTQA plus flags, anarchist and pacifist symbols, and I think some German band stripes. I approached the drunkards, I approached the foreigner, or Mom would have told me to stay out of it. I'm going to go with that because pacifist angle. Don't get involved, my mother always told me. You keep getting into trouble. You always want to get into trouble abroad when there's no one to help you. But that was the problem, wasn't it? I always managed to get involved. I just couldn't let it go even now. I approached the foreigner. I smiled and, ignoring the men, approached the foreigner. Hi, I'm Maya. I just got here, I said. They looked at me with a serene smile. Nice to meet you, Maya, they said with an unmistakable German accent. I'm Kim. I pointed to the drunks. We started talking. I suggested that we should leave. I'm going to go with we started talking. What brings you here, I asked. In Białowieza, I mean. I came to see the forest and to protect it. They sounded deadly serious. Me and my friends heard about what's happening here, and we decided to come and help. The men on the bench were looking at us grimly. Hey, someone said suddenly from behind our backs. Kim smiled, and the men on the bench stiffened. I turned around. It was Lisa. You should stop drinking that moonshine. It makes you pick fights you can't win, she said. She looked ferocious. And the drunks started explaining themselves. But look at this Elzunia, one of them said, gesturing towards us. For the last fucking time, the name's Lisa. She was furious. And this is my friend, and you'll leave them alone. Got it? The drunkards mumbled and went back to drinking. Thanks, Lisa, Kim said in English. You shouldn't have. But I wanted to. So I'm going to look up the Elzunia word. No related words. I'm going to look it up on Google. Okay, it's a type of butterfly. So that's kind of, I guess they're trying to say fairy, butterfly. Okay, makes sense. I get what they're going with that. So, I waved at her. Hi, Lisa. I waved at her. I think I saw relief in her eyes when she looked at me. Hi, Maya. I was worried you'd gotten yourself into trouble there. So will you join us on the anti-logging protest tomorrow? She asked me after a while. Suddenly, a feeling rushed over me. I was burning or I was cold. I don't want to get my rage too high. I'm going to drop it down. Suddenly, I felt cold despite the hot, sticky summer air, as though there were a wind from the forest that blew only for me, inside me, chilling my bones and blood. There was something sad and helpless about it, even though it felt all-powerful. A word appeared in my mind, a strange one that was neither Polish nor English. Harano. I noticed Kim watching me. I felt like I was being watched, and when I looked up, I saw Kim observing me with a curious expression. Hold on 1 second. I'm looking something up. Alright. I thought so. It was a Werewolf the Apocalypse term, and I didn't remember what it was, but I'm not going to say what it is yet because I think it plays into the story that you were not supposed to know what it is yet. They knew what had happened to me. I realized they knew I'd felt this strange connection to the forest. Tell me, I asked. I know you have strange dreams, they whispered. I suspect the forest is reaching out to you. They leaned closer to me. You can't escape your destiny. The words were like a punch in the gut. It would be dangerous to even try. I'm going to go with who was I. I'm going to burn some willpower here, but I kind of need to know who I am. Who am I? I asked quietly. You can see the invisible, they said, looking at me in the eyes. You will find a way. Suddenly, I felt confident. So, right there, I got my willpower right back. I felt a sudden surge of confidence. I wasn't making that up. There was some strange destiny waiting for me, and there were people who know what was going on. Before I could ask more, Anya and Bartek approached, and Kim shook their head, silencing me. Meet us tomorrow at the logging site. They blew me a kiss, put their arm around Lisa, and walked away. We decided to leave as well. The village. I keep looking over my shoulder, but no one was following us. We called it a day and went back. The first evening. The B&B was quaint. I left Anya and Bartek outside. They looked like they needed some time alone to say their goodbyes. When I got out of the shower, Anya was back smiling and a little flustered. What a day, she smiled. So, what do you think? I made a quick mental inventory of everything that had happened that day. They were cutting down the forest. I remembered that scene at the shop. I mentioned the graveyard, or I told her what happened when I talked with Lisa. I'm going to go with... I mentioned the graveyard. What happened here that people are still vandalizing my family's grave? What did my grandfather do? She put a hand on my shoulder. Whatever it was, it's not your fault. It wasn't, but it could be my responsibility. Go to cutting down the forest. Anya's now loyal instead of just friendly. I can't believe they're logging here, I shook my head. Isn't the forest on a UNESCO list or something? Yeah, I know. I want to check out this protest people were talking about. Maybe we can go there tomorrow? I remembered the scene at the shop. Remember the shop? The tension seemed almost unnatural. A few words more, it would have been a regular fight. Maybe they just envied Kim's style, Anya tried to joke, but she seemed worried. I don't think I'm going to tell her about my little private thing right now. I'm going to go with I didn't feel like talking anymore. I don't want to tell her about that whisper I had with Kim. You know what? I'm seriously tired. Let's call it a day, shall we? Soon we were both in our beds ready to sleep, and I have low rage right now. Even though I was tired, sleep didn't come quickly. Anxiety was spreading its cold, writhing roots deep in my chest and stomach. I lay there for some time looking at the silver rectangle painted on the wall by the moonlight. So much was happening here. I could feel everything boiling, lots and lots of threads entwining. It was one of these threads. I was one of these threads, and my role would soon be uncovered. I felt I was closer to getting my answers. It looks like I'm going to get another willpower point. Awesome. I felt that the answers we're looking for were within my reach. I just had to go and see the logging protests, meet the right people, and make them talk. After a while, all these thoughts became blurry. They slowly started to turn into pictures, sounds, and colors. I drifted off. Time for another dream sequence.
I can't do the different voice for everyone. They're Eastern European, and I would have a hard time, and I would feel like I'm insulting people that are from that area. So, or I can, and I'm playing a girl character, so the whole time I can kind of talk like this, but that would be a little bit weird. You know, it would be cool though if one time we played this and we did a screen share and we get a couple females on and a couple guys, and we could all take different parts. Okay, A Night in the Woods. A lonely ray, low rage again. There's a low rage option. A lonely ray of the moonlight shines on the broken nameplate on the old grave. Imprisoned under the cold, shiny stone, the dead weight for something. I tremble. Something is coming. It's huge and monstrous. I'm gonna go with I'm a cub. I'm a wolf cub like the ones my grandfather told me about. I will grow and my fangs will become sharper. I will taste blood. I feel a pull and I surrender to it. I run toward a clearing. There are piles of fresh corpses of people who died too young, skinned and mutilated. Their loved ones stand around them, grieving, unable to do anything, waiting. And suddenly, they are just trees and tree trunks. I'm going to weep. My spiritual went up to 7. I weep and other voices join me, terrified and hollow. The trees are dead and I'm here to help console their spirits. There is a stench in the air like meat rotting in acid, but somehow worse. I see the monstrous army. Their mandibles are whirling chainsaws. Their long metal arms are wrapped with black pipes that look like glistening intestines. Their smell is vile. They wait, unmoving. So I can raise my rage and charge at them. I can lower my rage and pay respects to the dead, or I could turn to the forest for answers. Whew. Yeah. This is a hard one. I think I am going to charge them. I know I'm a pacifist in this, but I'm going to let my rage overcome me a little bit here. I try to breathe through my mouth as I run toward the machines. I hit and kick them blindly, screaming at the top of my lungs, and in my own screams I hear strange whispers. They tell me to look at the sky. There, between the stars, 2 shapes circle each other. An old, sad wolf with gray hair and a white weasel. They keep their eyes on one another as they continue their dance. Suspicious, but not hostile. We need to fight the enemy, the awful, rotting stench. I know that much. But how can we do that when we don't trust each other? They stop. They look at me in the clearing. So, I look at them cautious with the balanced, or I can lose a willpower point, but because I have such high spirituality, I can give them my blessing, and that's what I'm going to do. So now Pushja is sympathetic. I spill my blood and bless them with the words that I do not recognize, but that I understand. They come down to me, and their voice is the voice of the Pushja. Come here, cub. Come here, cub. We have great things ahead of us. I wake up. So Pushja is calling me to the forest, to herself. Chapter 2, Logging. So I got 2 rage, 1 willpower, full health. It's June 21st, the next day. The day after. The next morning was full of sunshine and birdsong. I could smell the heat of the afternoon building. Those long, honey-like hours in late June when the earth isn't tired of its warmth yet. But it was crisp and pleasant now. Real quick, I'm going to go on Google and I'm going to look up something. I want to see average temperature in northeast Poland late June. I want to know what they're saying is hot. So it looks like for them hot is daily temperatures average around 17 to 19 Celsius, which is 63 to 66 degrees Fahrenheit. And then July and August, it'll get up to 20, 21 Celsius, which is 68 to 70 degrees Fahrenheit. So from June to August, it's mild. So it's what they're calling hot here for, like myself in Texas, and for those of us in the and for those in the chat room that are from Florida, them thinking that the high 60s, low 70s is a hot day is interesting. I sat on my bed for a moment, letting my feet dangle from it. I have balanced rage, so it says, I wasn't sure how it felt. The weight of the previous day had coiled up somewhere in my chest, and it felt like a tiny merry-go-round gaining speed. Then there was the dream. The clearing, the animals in the night sky waiting for me. I took a shower, ate something without really paying attention, and went out. Anya joined us. Summer morning, we've got two options here. We were halfway through the forest when Bartek caught up with us. You were right, Anya. The protest is important. We got the forest and we got Białowieza town. Looks like we can't choose Białowieza, so we have to go to the protests. Against the machines. Balanced rage. I was running all the options over and over in my head, and I didn't really care where I was going. When I looked up, the sun was shining, the village was far behind me, and I was at the logging site. Anya looked around. So, what's the plan? I have to stop the logging. I had to understand my destiny, and I needed to find someone. I'm going to go with I needed to find someone. There's someone I had to find and press for answers. Lisa's girlfriend is who we were told to talk to. Lisa had said that her girlfriend could answer my questions. She was supposed to be here. I looked around. On my right was the ancient forest. On my left was the freshly torn clearing. Ahead of me, ruining the view, were huge logging machines and a group of people arguing in their shadow. I thought the machines were sucking the life out of the air, like they were a wound, not just pieces of equipment. I'm going to go with, I looked at everyone. There were people there, too. The loggers were sitting idly on the tree trunks, sharing cigarettes. The police that stood between them and a colorful group of protesters were visibly uneasy and twitchy. I saw some reporters who were clearly bored because no one was doing anything interesting. The harvesters loomed over the clearing, reeking. Lisa was standing next to Olga from the cemetery, who was arguing with a vaguely military-looking man in his 30s. The protesters were clearly conflicted. I can go with I want to know what it was all about. Maybe I could solve the conflict, or they clearly needed some advice. See, these two here are very presumptuous that I know better than them. So I need to know what it was all about. Inspiring. 3. Nice. Protesters were clearly conflicted. Curious about the reason for it all, I approached the protesters. One of the police officers, young and nervous, said something I didn't fully understand. I'm going to go ahead and I let Bartek handle it. Bartek leaned over to him and whispered something. The officer instantly lost interest. Good. Police are now neutral to me. Oh, he said, you're one of them and let us go. Then I noticed someone joined us. And then I noticed that someone used the commotion to sneak with us past the police, a girl with disheveled, bleached-out hair. Don't worry, she patted the officer on the arm. It was an awful pickup line anyway. He recoiled. You shouldn't touch me, ma'am. I'm going to smile. I smiled at her and wanted to say something, but I was interrupted. Pat, some guy called her from the gathering. Could you come here? I need you to show Olga that chart. She sighed, reached into her backpack and taking out a tablet. And they're at it again, she murmured under her breath and winked at me. Coming. As I walked towards Lisa, I heard more and more of the argument. Olga, you can't. The man was speaking with a strong German accent. See, if I did my German accent, it would be like, Olga, you can't. And that just doesn't sound right. Olga, you can't. The man was speaking with a strong German accent. Pat stood next to him with her tablet. She looked a bit amused. Do not fucking tell me what I can or can't do, Cornell. Olga interrupted. I can, because they are destroying our mother. I can fight with all the means at my disposal, even if that means burning those harvesters to the ground. A slender, green-eyed man was standing near her. He took a few steps back, went towards one of the harvesters, turned his back on us all, and pissed on the machine. Olga smirked. Aw, Daniel, you know how to bring the point home. He looked at her confused. Burn the harvesters? Cornell asked calmly. In this drought? Olga, are you out of your mind? You know what I mean. We fight them any way we can because this is a fucking war, she spat. He sighed. You've never seen real war and it shows. Nobody is shooting at us, and believe me, we want it to stay that way. We need a peaceful protest. I approached Lisa. Hey, can we talk? I asked, approaching Lisa. Oh, hi, Maya. Good to see you. Listen, we have a little dispute here. Maybe you'll be able to explain the problem to our friend. Oh, so I was to take a stand. I looked at them both. Olga with her fury and passion, Cornell with his cool professional demeanor, and shared without any reservations what I felt about the situation. Now, this is going to be one of those conscious moments because, like I said, I'm playing this through as a intending to play through as a pacifist. So this is where, from my previous playthroughs that I've done, not on Twitch but myself, it's going to diverge to avenues I've never seen before in this game, because usually I go hardcore with let's burn this shit down. So peaceful wasn't flashy enough. There was a fine line to tread, and it wasn't about personal victory. Wasn't about personal victory. So spiritual goes to 8. Olga's now cautious. Cornell's unfriendly. Lisa's neutral. Daniel's cautious, and Kim is sympathetic. I looked at them both. Honestly, there are a lot more solutions than violence, I said in a clear voice, and I think that saving the forest is more important than winning a war or a dispute. Kim shook her head and moved forward. Olga, darling, you know I love you, but Cornell really knows what he's doing. Please, trust me on that one. They looked at her apologetically. Fuck off, Kim. You didn't even trust me enough to come here on your own when I asked you to. Lisa looked them straight in the eye. Kim, you want to teach me about violence? She looked them straight in the eye. About fighting oppression just because your boss went to what, one mission in Afghanistan? Her Polish was peculiar, kind of mellow. Cornell winced. Lisa, leave Kim alone. He didn't know what to say, and it seemed that the whole situation would be derailed. Maybe it was for the best, or I didn't let that happen. I'm not going to let it happen. Hey guys, the forest, I said. The logging, the protest. Olga unclenched her fists. Cornell looked back at her and chuckled softly. You almost punched me. The conversation was over, at least for the time being. Cornell, together with his cronies, walked toward the reporters while Olga went back to the group of people standing in the shadow of an old oak tree. Pushcha is sympathetic. I looked at the Pushcha. The clearing full of felled trees was like a gaping, bleeding wound in the chest of a friend. Now I have no choice but to do something here, and it's going to max out my rage. This is when bad decisions start happening. I'm going to have to spend willpower probably to keep myself under control. I looked at my friends. We have to stop this logging. Yes, just like Olga said, Anya nodded, excited. What are they going to do? What they are doing is unforgivable, and we have to fight. It's a very complicated situation, Bartek looked thoughtful. I liked what that guy Cornell said, that we should proceed peacefully, not to discourage the public and potential supporters. I looked at one group, I looked at the other. The logging site. The harvesters were dripping with black oil, and the forest stood tall, serene, and full of golden light. It looked like it could protest itself. And then I looked at the felled trees, dead, limp, helpless. So I can go over to the harvesters, to Olga for the answers, or Cornell for diplomacy. I'm going to go to Cornell first. As I approached the group, Kim waved at me. Come here. They took me straight to the leader of their group, the man who was arguing with Olga. Hello, Maya, he said. I see you haven't come alone. He reached out his hand. I have my choice of he'd acted like a dick arguing with Olga, or I shook it. I'm going to go ahead and shake it. His handshake was firm and strong. His eyes were an uncanny shade of gray. He might have been in his early 30s, I thought. And then I have high rage, so it's damn, he looked tough. I don't have an option. Damn, you look like a tough guy, I blurted out, impressed. He was, in that bad boy hipster military way. I know, he said without skipping a beat. Cornell looked me in the eyes. I know why you came to Yawoveja. The forest is under attack, and you came here to play your destined role in saving it. He seemed to believe it. Nice. I had to spend some willpower. Or I got my willpower back, rather, because I progressed. Good. I looked at him, skeptical, but he seemed to believe it. The important question is, he looked at me intensely, do you want to help? I had no time to answer. Before I could answer, I heard a commotion and turned around. The reporters were coming our way, but their cameras were switched off and pointed at the ground. Either they should have been filming, I saw an opportunity to shine, or why weren't they filming? I'm going to go with the curious route. My analytical's going up. Good. Funny, I thought. They should be taking photos or filming the protest, but I couldn't remember if they were when I arrived at the site. So? Cornell asked. There was a hint of impatience in his voice. The reporter shook his head and grimaced. Sorry, everyone. We can't do anything. We're not allowed to cover what's going on here. What did they mean? Suddenly I understood. I'm going to go with suddenly I understood. Then it hit me. The police weren't here to protect the protesters or the press. Yeah, it must be hard to do your job when the police is watching your every step, I said, and they nodded. There was a moment of tense silence. Then it all came together. Suddenly I understood the dream. That was the moment I was destined to intervene. The protest was too quiet, they needed inspiration. I just had to make the reporters understand, or we could still use the reporters. Let's see here. See, if I go with the protest was too quiet, they needed inspiration. I could start some shit I can't handle. I just had to make the reporters understand, or we could still use the reporters. I'm gonna go with we could still use the reporters. I looked at the protesters. Their frustration was getting to me. They didn't have any real plan, or they were as lost as I was. I gotta lower my rage a bit. They knew they wanted to protect the forest, but they didn't have a clue how to do it. I looked around, put my hands in my pockets, and wandered toward the journalists. They just needed a nudge, the cops were scared, or I just wanted to be heard. I'm going to go with balanced. More analytical. We have the upper hand. We know what we stand for. They don't, I continued. They think they're the masters here, but they're just following orders. They're just weak, vulnerable humans. They think their badges and weapons will protect them. Unspectacular as it was, I managed to connect. Does it always look like this? I asked. I mean, is it an everyday situation that you can't report? No, answered one of them. He was tall and in his 30s. There were a few glances toward him, almost flash of warning, but it was too late. So why weren't they filming, but why were they in Białowieża at all? I'm going to go ahead and burn the willpower. Wait, so why are you here at all? I asked, and then it hit me. You were sent to find some dirt on the activists, to get something that would compromise the protest. They looked at one another, suddenly unsure of what to say. Then I heard shouts as Olga and her protesters clashed with the police, and the cameramen grabbed their gear and ran toward the action. Remember, we want the aggressive ones, shouted one of the reporters. I could see the logo of the national TV station on his camera. Soon we were alone. Fuck, Cornell swore and threw his thermal cup at the ground. It bounced, spilling hot coffee everywhere. Someone grabbed me by the shoulder. I turned around and saw Kim. This is when you exit the scene. They turned me away and gently but firmly pushed me away. We'll be in touch, they whispered. So that didn't go so well. The ugly truth. When I was on the road to the village and nobody could see me, I doubled over and vomited. I always felt violently sick when there was too much to process at once. In the whole commotion, I lost Anya and Bartek from sight. I was alone. Hey, are you all right? A voice behind me asked, and I jumped. A woman was walking toward me. I was fine. I'm fine, I said stiffly. She rummaged in her pocket and handed me a handkerchief. Here, she said, I have water as well if you need it. We walked slowly toward the village. I learned that she was an independent German reporter who'd come here about a month ago. Her name was Erica. So why are you protesting the logging? She asked after a few minutes of small talk. I'm going to go with we had to save the Pushcha. I think the Pushcha is unique, and when I saw how many trees they've cut down in just one afternoon, it broke my heart, I said, still shaken by the sheer number of the fallen trees. I have to do whatever I can to save the forest. I looked at her. And why are you asking? Do you know why they are cutting down the trees? She asked. Because you do know the logging is done by a government company, the state forests. But why are they doing this? I wasn't sure if I understood. Shouldn't the state forest take care that the forest was Shouldn't the state forests take care that the forest was healthy? It all started with spruce bark beetles. Erica looked into her notes and started explaining the whole situation. That year, the beetles' infestation was of catastrophic proportions, and the foresters decided that the only way to stop it and save the rest of the forest was to cut down as many infested trees as fast as possible. Couldn't they just remove the dead trees? Maybe if they removed the dead trees, the infestation wouldn't spread. I tried to find a solution. They might do that, but dead trees are what make the forest unique. There are 20 times more species living in a dead spruce tree than in a live one. Is cutting down trees the only way to stop the infestation? I asked, confused. The foresters state that it is the only way, she said. Some biologists argue that they are cutting the wrong trees and doing it too late to change anything. But was the logging legal? But is the logging legal? I wanted to know. Opinions differ, but such massive logging in a UNESCO-listed area might be illegal, Erica answered. Couldn't they just leave the pushta alone and let nature take its course? I asked. That's one of the options, Erica admitted, but there's a drought and no one is sure if the forest would survive on its own. I have balanced rage, so it says. The situation was more complex than I thought, and Erica's answers did nothing to clear the picture. I'm going to burn some willpower, and I'm going to try to understand her point of view. I see that you are trying to show me the whole picture, and I appreciate it, I sighed. I just hoped there would be an easy answer. I'm just doing my job, Erica shrugged. I describe all aspects of the situation to you, but it's up to you to decide what you want to do. I shook my head. Why did the situation always have to be so complex? At least I was there when they were At least I was sure that they were cutting down the trees and the pushta needed my help. So I'm going to go with my spiritualist route, which is I ask her to stop and listen. Stop for a moment and just listen, I asked Erica. We stood there, listening to the birds and the wind in the trees. We breathed in the smell of the forest. We felt the sun on our faces. That's why I cannot let them cut down the trees, I said. She looked skeptical. You're not the only one feeling helpless, she sighed. I'm just helping you make an informed choice. So what should I do when I feel that something is wrong? I asked, exasperated. Do you believe that people can be evil? She asked back. I'm going to go with we could do bad things for sure. Some people do really shitty things, I shrugged. But is it just their actions or their nature? I said nothing. What's the matter? She asked. I'm going to go with my balanced. I felt so helpless when I saw all that. I took a deep breath. Then I remembered what Cornell had said. And they said that I'm destined to save the day. I shook my head. It's a lot to take in. And there was that foul smell back there. She looked at me with a weird expression. What smell? You didn't smell it? The harvesters reeked of something like meat that's been rotting in acid, only worse. I couldn't even find the words to describe it, but the memory of the foulness still clung to the back of my throat, swimming in my sinuses. I know what you're talking about, she answered slowly, but I don't think everybody can smell it. I looked at her and raised my eyebrow questioningly. You'll learn in your own time if you stay here long enough, she said, clearly wanting to drop the topic. What did she mean? What do you mean? I asked, getting irritated. I just told you, you'll learn in time, or not at all, which would frankly be better. Anyway, gotta run. As I watched her leave, I thought that whatever was my destiny had surely manifested itself that day. Got some willpower back. I jumped right into the middle of a very tense situation and at the very least upset the status quo. I just hoped I hadn't made things worse. Time to regroup. When I opened the door, I found Anya and Bartek sitting on Anya's bed. They were a little flustered and were nonchalantly trying to look like I hadn't interrupted anything. We lost sight of you, Bartek said apologetically. I'm glad you made it back in one piece. So, how was your day? Anya asked. Let's see. I'm going to put I learned a lot. Did you know the government supported the logging even when it was illegal? I shared my dismay. If they support it, it can't be illegal, Bartek crossed his arms. Of course it can, I threw my arms up, frustrated. I had a nice chat with the reporters, I grinned, and then I learned a thing or two. Anya frowned. I heard that you can't trust them. Bartek nodded. Of course not. He looked for a word. They're hyenas. I never said that I did, and I winked. Go with I met a lot of new people. I met some very interesting people, I said, still excited. Yeah, they looked like a colorful bunch, Anya grinned. Bartek rolled his eyes. Colorful and uninvited. They sure are passionate. They argue between themselves more than they argue with the loggers, I added. I'm going to put I'm going to go with what was Bartek's problem. What's your problem? I snapped at Bartek. I'm just telling you what happened. There's no reason to be a dick about it. You think that just because you're American, you can barge in and try to solve our problems, he scoffed. I'm not the one being a dick. I decided to let it slide. I'm going to go with that's all I have to share. Bartek kind of is a dick. Just another day in Białowieza. We sat for a while in silence. You know, there's more to see here than Białowieza, Bartek said to me. You should visit Pogozelce. Booty. Teremitski. Or Cherlonka. See the open-air museum in the Bison. The logging is not all that happens here. Couldn't see everything. It would be great if we could see everything, but I can't, I shrugged. I want to focus on the logging, even if I'm missing something else. And how's the search for your roots going? Asked Bartek, clearly wanting to change the topic. They said that I'm sort of the chosen one. They keep telling me that there's some cryptic destiny I have to fulfill. Wow, Anya looked impressed. Honestly, I'm not sure what to think, but if you need something, just let me know. I just sat there looking through the window. The day'd been full on and I was exhausted. Dream sequence. I can do anything. It's quiet now, yet I know deep down inside that something isn't right. I keep walking. I'm walking through the forest to the logging site. It's getting dark. The light seeps away as though there are millions of tiny punch holes in the sky through which it can escape, and then the darkness starts to pour in. I know what I will see. And I see bodies strewn across the ground, bloodied, maimed, with their limbs torn from destroyed torsos. I can see some of them still alive, still struggling for air, still trying to live. They are all trees, fallen trees, still alive, still struggling for air. But I'm not alone. The monsters are coming. They have long skeletal arms. They are wrapped in glistening black intestines, and each arm has a wide, gaping mandible full of whirring blades. They snap at me blindly, but I'm not alone. Because of my high spiritual, I have this portion here. I can feel the forest by my side. Some of my new friends have horns. Some have antlers. Their eyes shine in the dark, and they are ready. They are furious. I can feel their ancient anger merge with mine. Got some willpower back? I howl ancient oaths. I invoke the moon. I spill blood. The spirits of the forest move, and I am with them, biting off heads and tearing off limbs. We are a nightmare come true. Then I wake up. I gasped and bolted upright. I was alone. The sun was setting, and in the deep red light, the room looked like it was bathed in blood. My pillow was on the ground, and the duvet was torn. Tiny feathers were spilling through the tear. What happened? Uh-oh. Standoff. I need to talk. There was no way I was going back to sleep. Since I'd arrived in this accursed village, things had been getting more and more peculiar with every passing hour. The last dream freaked me out, and I needed to find answers to all the questions buzzing in my head. I needed to talk it over with someone I trusted. So my options. Kim is sympathetic. Kim seemed okay. Anya is loyal. Anya was in it from the start, or the problem was that I didn't trust anyone. I'm going to go with Kim. Thought about Kim. They had to have lots of experience, and they seemed to accept all the strange shit that life throws at us. We definitely hit it off well, as well. The sun had just set, and the moon wasn't up yet. The forest loomed on the horizon. The activist camp was somewhere there. I soon ran into Bartek and Anya. "Oh, Maya, good to see you," she said. "We need to talk." "We're worried about you. Since we got here, you've looked distressed," she explained with a sigh. "I've asked around, and it seems you're associating with some dangerous people." "They know something about me, something I don't know," I answered, "and I need that information." "But they can come with me if they want." I'm going to give them the option whether they want to come with me or not. "I know you have your own things to do," I admitted, "but if you want, you can come with me." And Anya's loyal. Anya smiled. "Sure, sister," and then we walked together. Bartek followed without any discussion. I was quite sure he did it for Anya, not me. The camp had a different vibe than the logging site protest. There were more people there. We looked around, trying to take it all in. The people in the camp seemed quite cheerful. The smells were intriguing. I watched them for a moment, or someone was singing. I'm going to go with I watched them for a moment. I saw people at work. Some of them were filling big barrels with sand. Some were busy making what seemed to be posters. The rest were singing or cooking. Everyone was contributing in one way or another. I have to go now or my dad will kill me, said Bartek. Take care. And he was gone. So much for our local support. I'm going to go with I saw Kim talking to Cornell. Cornell don't like me. Hello, I said as I approached. Cornell smiled at me. Hello, he said. What brings you here? I'm going to go with I was confused. Good, he's getting a little, I think he's getting a little better. I'm confused, I answered. Is it really true? I mean, all the stories I've heard connecting me and the forest? Cornell looked at me with those uncanny gray eyes. I could feel his attention lock on me. Yes, it's true, he said. And that's why we're here, to stop the government destroying the forest, to show that we don't agree and that we hope to make a difference. And you have your role to play. Will it work? I asked. I don't know. And all I know is that it worked before. It worked for Gandhi. It worked with segregation and apartheid in the end. It worked with communism. So let's see if it works with capitalism as well. Violence is not an option here. He smiled, and I think you know quite well that anger doesn't really get shit done. And I'm going to put, I knew that because that fits with the playthrough I'm doing. I smiled back. Somehow being around him made me feel more relaxed. I know, you can count on me, I answered. I had a chance to make a difference, but I couldn't just be an observer anymore. So we may have a little citizen protest going on tonight, Cornell said, but I'll need your support if we want to convince the others. The tipping point. They all wanted to do something that night, but after a whole day's discussion, they were still divided on what to do. 3 for one option, 3 for the other. I had the deciding vote. So we've got Olga's plan has violence, and then Cornell's plan has peaceful protest. Again, going with the playthrough I'm doing, got to go with the peaceful protest. A little help from my friends. I voted for the peaceful protest, and soon we were on our way to the National Park headquarters and education center. We had some banners to install. I'm going to let Anya tag along. This is so exciting, Anya whispered. I've never done anything so illegal. Soon we were there. Maxed out willpower. As we were on our way, I realized that we followed the path only because of my vote. I made a difference. The National Park headquarters were located in something called Palace Park. The name, like everything in Poland, was historical. Centuries ago, some king had his hunting lodge there, but now it was a mishmash of old and new buildings scattered around the park. Some were rough and bulky, made of stone and brick, while others were an extravaganza of wooden porches, lace-like shutters, and meticulously sculpted pillars. There was no one around, but the area was well lit. It was exhilarating. I looked around, or I needed to be careful. I'm going to go with I looked around. I like to be observant. I looked around once more. The moon was hidden behind the clouds, and I didn't see any stars in the sky. If you didn't count us, the park really seemed empty, dead even. Suddenly, I remembered the church located just next to the Palace Park gate. I could feel the dark silhouette looming in the darkness. I can feel its dark silhouette looming in the darkness, waiting. We were ready. They'd spent the whole day painting the sign on a length of material sewn together from what looked like old sheets that were various shades of grayish white. The dark green letters declared, "Wood is the enemy of the forest." That doesn't sound right. "Where do we hang it?" asked Daniel, who'd come equipped with climbing gear. He clearly needed inspiration. I shared my recommendations, or we can cover the church. Huh. If we cover the church, that might piss off the locals, because that's stepping on people's ancestry, so I don't want to do that. I'm just going to share my inspiration, my recommendations. I think we should attach it to the drain pipes here and there. I pointed to 2 corners of the building. Daniel grunted in agreement. It doesn't matter, Olga said, because hanging the banner is a waste of time. She was clearly upset that we had ditched her plan, but perhaps she had a point. I asked her for advice. So what could we do better for next time? I asked her for advice. We could vote for a plan that has a chance of actually helping the forest, Olga rolled her eyes. It's a great banner, and I'm sure it will look good on the pictures published by a number of independent political blogs. She looked at Cornell. But it's stuck so deep into the overeducated ecological dispute that people won't get it and the loggers won't care. Cornell just shook his head and gestured Danielle to continue. I waited patiently. Soon the sign was up. Oh, my analytical went up. Cool. Soon the sign was up, screaming our message to all of Białowieza. Cornell looked at me. Maya, what do you think? I really didn't get the slogan. I mean, I could spend willpower and say that it was glorious, but I mean, I get what it's trying to say is that wood, when you turn a tree into wood, it is the enemy of the forest because it's killing the trees. I get that, but most people aren't going to make that connection. People don't read past a headline nowadays. So, but I do have some willpower to spend. I'll say it was glorious. I made him sympathetic. Great. I didn't really get that slogan, but decided to play it anyway. Oh, I sighed. It's glorious. I'm glad you think so, he grinned. I love the wording. Humans let the forest grow so they can take wood from it, but that isn't the purpose of the forest. Finally, we pulled the banner up. It's an important message. Anya looked up from the fire with fire in her eyes. The world must know. I looked at the sign flying high over the park. When we finished, Cornell gathered us together. I was proud of what we'd accomplished. And I'd contributed to that. So there we go. I got my willpower back. Maybe it was my destiny to find a peaceful solution to the conflict. Cornell reached for his bicycle. Let's go for a trip, he said, to remind ourselves what we're trying to protect. Cool. This is a new path. I've never had this on any of my playthroughs. Pushcha is sympathetic. The woods were full of stars. We cycled in silence, enjoying the company of the forest as it enjoyed ours. At some point, a clearing opened up before us. It was surrounded by boulders, placed in a circle. They looked relaxed. A soft breeze rustled in the trees, welcoming us. What was this place? There was something eerie about the place. I cleared my mind and inhaled. When I took a breath, I felt a wave of strange energy filling my body, harmonious and bright. I wonder if anyone else felt it as well. Do you guys feel that? I looked at my companions, but before anyone could answer, a loud sound tore through the silence. It was a gunshot. Anya gasped, looking around wide-eyed and terrified. The others tensed up, but they didn't look concerned, just confused. Who's there? Cornell shouted. There was a rustle, and I saw a bunch of men in camo, each of them with a rifle, coming toward us between the trees. I watched their angry steps and listened to the murmured curses. Suddenly I noticed Bartek was with them. He winced when he saw me. Their leader weighed us up for a moment and finally focused on Cornell. This area is closed for the night, the huntsman said in Polish. There was contempt in his voice. There is a hunt going on and y'all are trespassing. Wow, he said y'all and he's Polish. We have police officers here, so I would go home if I were you, unless you want to get arrested. I felt the forest tense up. The man was the one who was trespassing. I'm going to try to de-escalate. No, I'm going to turn to the forest for advice. There you go. Spirituals at 9. This man, I realized, was no one. He wasn't important here. What was important was the forest and what it needed. And it cared about me and didn't want me to get hurt. There would be other knights and other people to fight. But right then I felt that it wanted me to leave. Into the night, balanced. I ran, my arms shielding my face, my skin slick with sweat and darkness thick around me. I was holding Anya's hand as we pushed blindly through the night. Something was chasing us. We left the shouts and gunshots long behind us, but we couldn't stop. Something was chasing us. 2 silhouettes, one lean, the other bulky. I saw them in the corner of my eye and they leapt forward. At first I thought they were people, but as they leapt they got longer. Longer, smaller, I couldn't see clearly. It was dark. Sweat was blinding me, and they were hiding behind the trees. I heard howling and growling, and when I saw there was wolves chasing us. I'm going to try to face them. I stopped in the middle of the path and turned to face the animals. I couldn't explain why, but I knew it was the right thing to do. What are you doing? Whispered Anya, terrified. I ignored her. I looked at the wolves. They looked at me. Felt strangely connected to them. Spiritual 10, Pushcha friendly. Nice. I heard a rustle in leaves and then there was a voice in my head. My little Thurge. I knew what it was. I knew that it was the Pushcha and that she was pleased with me. I also knew that Thurge meant wisdom. We're the same, I realized with shock. You and I. The wolves dispersed and then something happened, something that I couldn't see clearly, and 2 people stepped out of the bushes. I knew both of them. Olga and Cornell. I'm going to go with Cornell. Wait, she has the right to know, Cornell grabbed Olga's arm. One of us is going to bite you, she said matter-of-factly. And then you will die, Cornell added. One way or another, it's your destiny. I closed my eyes. There was a series of wet cracks, like skin breaking, torn from within my muscles, that suddenly grew by bones rapidly getting longer, by fur and teeth and claws. When I dared to look, I saw 2 8-feet-tall monsters standing in front of me on the narrow path in the forest. I'm going to put I knew it. Everything finally clicked. I fucking knew it! And then there was only pain, and I lost 2 units of health. Bloody moon. The pain was unbearable. Nothing in my life had prepared me for this. I knew I was dying. Blinded by the blood in my eyes, my shoulder and chest burning around the wound, I knew I was dying. Lost in the woods, away from my family, such as it was, I could only watch as my life pumped out of my body in a crimson river. I said my goodbyes. I felt the shadows gathering around me, sympathetic, curious, hungry. The forest caught my fall with a bed of moss and twigs. I stopped thrashing and a cold numbness engulfed me. I could either give up or no, I tried to get up. I'm going to try to get up. I punched the earth trying to get some feeling in my hands. I gritted my teeth and tried to get up. I collapsed again. I felt so cold. Suddenly, there was light. I looked up. The full moon. I do have impaired health. Ooh, my health bar grew. And if you notice over here, it now says Hamid because I'm starting to shift. The moon, Luna in her full glory. The moon was a goddess, and she noticed me. Get up, she said. I get up. I feel good. I know that I shouldn't, but I don't remember why. I don't care. I stretch. My muscles are sore and cramped, so I stretched. Oh, I'm in Krynos form now. That's the big monster werewolf form. My muscles are sore and cramped, so I stretch like I've never stretched before. My arms are longer. My legs are stronger. My heart is pumping, and I feel like I've spent my whole life packed into a box, and finally I've been set free. My mind is clear. My mind is clearer than it's ever been before. I see the world in sharp contrast of black and white, movement and stillness. I smell prey. I hear language in the hooting of owls, the whistling of the wind, and the snarling of wolves. My fate has found me. I breathe. I take a breath and feel my ribs and muscles move. The forest smells of blood and fear and excitement. I laugh happily, and others' laughter joins me. We laugh and sing to the moon. Something stings me. I look around. There, a small malformed creature pointing a stick at me. The stick blazes with fire, and there's another sting. The creature is no threat to me, but its presence is annoying. Its smell almost sends me reeling, and I don't like being pricked. I could rip its head off, I could stick my hand in it, or I could push it away. I'm just going to push it away. I push the creature away, and it flies through the air making funny noises. Then it hits a tree and stays there, pinned to a branch like a butterfly. My ears prick, and I hear more creatures running blindly through the bushes. Got some health back. My leg no longer stings, and I feel better than ever. Is this a dream? Maybe it's a dream, I think, as I move silently through the undergrowth. I have high rage. The creatures are running away. Their backs turned to me. A growl escapes from between my teeth, and one of them turns my way. It challenges me. I'm just going to look at it. I look at it, and the creature curls up, shielding its face with its paws. It keeps talking, but the noises make no sense. I'm going to move on. It annoys me, but I ignore it, and I move on. Piercing light burns my eyes. I hear more creatures coming my way. They want to hurt me. I'm going to run away, because again, I'm still a pacifist even in this form. I am too smart for such an ambush. I claw my way through the nearest creature, and disappear among the trees. Their frustrated shouts make me laugh. I'm still in Krynos form, okay. I flare my nostrils, and there is a new smell. Something is coming. The creatures? No, something else. I see them moving among the trees. Suddenly I'm surrounded by them. I think I know them. They seem familiar. It's like I met them in the past, but they were hidden. They close in on me. What do they want? I'm going to wait. I relax and wait for them, unflinching. They approach me and sniff the air. Their smells are overwhelmingly familiar. Once the people had sounds attached to them, but now I realize the sounds were not their true names. I'm going to howl with joy. Run with us, they say. We howl with joy, and everything that hears us trembles with fear. Then we run through the forest and through the night. I get lost in the moment and pay no attention to the others. I'm alone in the heart of the forest. I look up and see no moon, only clouds and tangled branches. I go back to Hamid. Something changed and I realized how tired I was. I stumbled. Nothing was okay. The night was full of stars. Confused, I opened my eyes. The forest around me was thick and dark. The tree trunks, wrapped tightly in dark-leaved ivy, were covered in ripples of lichen where the vines hadn't taken hold. The thorny, leafless bushes at their base were overrun with nettles. The fungi radiated with a ghoulish, sickly green light. Dark, sponge-like mushrooms clung to the fallen trees. This is my dream from before. Something was wrong. I couldn't think straight, but I knew that something wasn't right. And I got that option because I have no willpower. My willpower is impaired. I looked down and saw my hands covered in dark substance. I was naked. A sticky, glistening film of liquid was clinging to my skin. I could feel it on my face and my hair. Blood. There was a whisper. The word resonated in my head. Guru. I remembered my dream and slowly lifted my eyes. There was a severed head right in front of me. I don't have any willpower, so I can't do that, so I have to feel sick. The face was contorted, the eyes bulging. The mouth open, the tongue stuck out. It was obscene. I doubled over, retching. Oh God, I recognized that face. It was Anya, her braids covered with dried blood. The head watched me with reproach. I am going to cry. I felt tears running down my cheeks and I let the sadness in. The bushes ruffled and a moment later I saw Cornell coming from between the trees. He looked at me, at the head, at my face. He came closer and squatted beside me. This is what we were trying to tell you, his gray eyes smiled. See, you're a werewolf. I looked at him. I blinked. So they're just gonna kind of shy away from the fact that Anya's dead? Chapter 4, Lost in the Woods. So, some character sheet changes. Breed is Hamid, human. Born a human. Auspice is still unknown. That's my moon, like your job, your class, so to speak. Rank is Cub. I'm brand new werewolf. Tribe is still unknown. That's my clan, my tribe. And as you can say here, I still have no bravery. I haven't been doing anything that has given me bravery points. I have 3 in inspiring, so I'm not that inspiring. I'm about halfway with analytical, which is good. My spiritual is maxed out at 10. That's why they're calling me a thurge. So that's probably the direction I'm going to take. And my cunning is at 2. So I'm healthy. My health bar filled up again. And these are all my little goals that I've completed. Anya's dead. Bartek is still cautious. Daniel's cautious. Family, it's complicated. Kim is sympathetic. Cornell is sympathetic. Lisa is neutral. Olga's cautious. Pat is sympathetic. Pushja is friendly. Police are neutral and press sympathetic. So far pretty good. I haven't really made any enemies, which is kind of the angle I'm going for. I'm trying to make this a peaceful, pacifistic as possible playthrough. We'll see if we can do that. The heart of the forest. The morning smelled of fir, earth, and the forest. Over the gentle snoring that filled the warm space under the low-hanging branches of an old spruce tree, I heard a squirrel. I was hungry. I'm going to quietly crawl outside. Quietly, so as not to wake anyone, I crawled outside. Alone, hiding in the tall grass, I sniffed around. I'm in lupus form, by the way. I'm in wolf form. The sky was bright and the forest around me was dark and full of interesting smells. High in the trees, birds yelled about status, sex, and violence. I'm going to go with memories started to come back. Something opened in my mind and memories started flooding back. The run through the night, the bite, the strange dream about being a werewolf. A creature stirred in bushes nearby, a tall, dark silhouette, a strangely familiar smell. And I tense up. I tensed up and watched the human as they looked around. "Maya, there you are," they said when they noticed me. It was time to get out of here. I spasmed. Suddenly, a feeling like cramp or a spasm surged through me, and everything changed. I was Hamid, the human form. My body started resetting itself into the familiar shape, and it hurt. Bones broke and fused again. Muscles and sinews moved under my skin. I cried and thrashed. Then, panting and sweaty, I was Hamid again. I hit the ground with my bare ass. Colors exploded. The morning breeze suddenly became cold, and I shivered. See, and over here I can mouse over Hamid. It says a guru of human ancestry. What's the moon? Waning gibbous. Okay. Cornell is sympathetic. "You look cold." Cornell smirked and threw me a bundle of clothes. "You better not change for a while. They won't survive it. Not until you learn the right, at least." I snatched the bundle and started pulling the clothes on. Sneakers, loose-fitting jeans, a hoodie with a unicorn. They fit perfectly. I thought about the previous night, when I was raging through the forest, about how differently I experienced the world through the wolf senses, and about the discomfort and confusion of changing shape. So, I was a werewolf. Got a willpower point back because I'm pushing my destiny forward. There was no denying it. I was no longer human. Wait a minute. A right? Did you mention a right? I raised an eyebrow. You mean magic is real? You're a werewolf. Do you even need to ask? We just stood there for a moment in silence. I was wondering how one usually learned that they were a werewolf. I'm going to ask Cornell about his history. I'm going to burn the willpower point. I want to try to develop this relationship. "So," I said, "how did you become a werewolf?" "I was born a werewolf, it seems," he answered. "Oh, I mean, when did you, change?" "Oh, that. I was serving in Afghanistan. There was an ambush. Stuff happened." Yes, friendly with Cornell. Developing that relationship. "I'm sorry," I said. "That must have been hard." "It was," he sighed. "They sent me home with PTSD, and once I got home, I got found by others. They needed someone who knew how to fight." "Why?" I asked. "We were the real eco-terrorists back then, my pack and I. But I realized that that violence only breeds more violence, and it's not the way I wanted to follow." "It doesn't make any sense," it suddenly struck me. "How come nobody knows werewolves exist?" "We protect the veil," was the answer. "It's easy to convince humans that supernatural doesn't exist, that the supernatural do not exist. They always want to believe that, and the delirium helps. So, the veil, a poetic term for the false assumption that the supernatural does not exist, which the delirium reinforces. The delirium, the madness and memory loss suffered by humans who look upon a guru in Krynos form." You mean delirium as in the medical condition?" I asked, remembering something that I read about acute confusional states. "You'll have to ask Pat for that, but the gist of it is that humans are incapable of remembering that they saw Krynos." He laughed. "They panic, turn away, and instantly forget every time. So Krynos, again, is the half-wolf, half-human war form of the guru, the biggest 8-foot-tall form." Then I realized something important. At some point, the rest of the party had awoken and joined us. The clearing was full of wolves. Fight or flight, balanced. The wolves were closing in on me. I knew my next decision would have serious consequences. So, I could go with denial and escape or acceptance and cooperation. I'm going to accept and cooperate. Hiding the bodies. The headless body was heavy. They said that, as my first kill, it was my burden. It was my duty to take it to the barrows. "But I didn't do it," I said, looking at the corpse. "I'd never..." "You have to balance the death you cause with your achievements." Cornell looked at me in the eyes. "That's the path of the guru." He accompanied me, carrying the severed head in a bag. The others stayed behind, covering the tracks. I gotta have a little remorse here. She only wanted to help, you know, I said quietly. She was so worried about what was happening here, and it's hard, Cornell admitted, looking at me with sympathy. But we're at war. Death happens. The faster you learn to accept it and honor it, the better the soldier you'll be. Apparently, I don't have any willpower, so I have to do some health. I kept dragging the body, but the burden was too much to bear. I was tired and hurt, and I just couldn't do it anymore. I looked at the body, and I really wanted to say something, but I choked on my words. I curled up into a ball with my arms around my head. Excuse me. I can't, I said, and then it was the only thing I could say, louder and louder, until it became a shriek. I can't. Cornell sighed and knelt beside me. You're a werewolf, Gaia's soldier. There's nothing you can't do. Get up. We have a world to save, and you have a destiny to fulfill. Gain some willpower. I took a deep breath. He was right. I was here for a reason, and I had things to do. I changed. I'm going to go to Glabro form so I can lift heavy things. I was Glabro, the near-human form. The pain was stronger than I ever imagined. I felt my muscles spasm as they rearranged themselves. My jaw cracked and my mouth filled with blood. I clenched my fists and claws drove into my palms. I screamed. When I rose, panting and sweaty, I was more than human. I was Glabro, wolfish, strong, scary. Gained some willpower back. The change hurt more than I expected. The world shifted. Not much, but enough. I felt my teeth get sharper and muscles stronger. I picked up the body. It was a lot lighter. We went on. At some point, I realized we weren't alone. There were two shapes in the bushes on either side of the road. Animals, one big and gray, the other small, nimble and white. Ah, my companion smiled. I see you've noticed our patrons. A patron is a spirit joined to a pack or tribe and representative of its inner nature. I remembered them from my dream. Yeah, we know each other, I said, remembering my dream. We sort of met the other night. The two animals stopped in front of me in the middle of the path. We came here to teach the cubs, said the wolf. She smelled of ash and tears. Was I hallucinating? I couldn't believe what I saw. It made no sense. I felt as if my brain were short-circuiting, trying to interpret signals not meant for human senses. My eyes told me there was a wolf staring at me, but when I looked at it, I felt ash on my tongue. And I heard a mourning howl so deep it reverberated in my bones, and I smelled fire. And when it talked, it was like the rustling of leaves formed words in my mind. But hallucinations or not, they just wouldn't leave me alone. The weasel circled me, and before I knew it, I could feel small claws on my leg, then on my back, then on my arm. It smelled of musk and electricity. I ignored it. And then it bit my ear. Do they always do that? I asked, ignoring the spirit. Speak to me when I'm biting you, the weasel's electronic voice echoed in my head. Enough, the wolf growled, or at least that's what my brain decided to hear. In the beginning, there was Gaia, a.k.a. Mother Earth, and she gave birth to a mighty breed of warriors, the weasel began. It sounded electronical, like a teenager reading a Wikipedia page over a voice chat. They were called Guru, that's werewolves and werewolfish, and their sole purpose was to protect Gaia. They failed, said the wolf. I looked to the weasel for advice. Why did they fail? I looked to the weasel for advice. When time began, Gaia released three primal forces upon the earth: the weaver, the wild, and the worm. The weasel continued. The wild was the untamed force of life and creation in the world. The cold, ruthless weaver gave structure to the world, and the worm destroyed what needed to be destroyed, creating balance. So, were werewolves creatures of the wild? I asked. An untamed force of life? They were Gaia's children, the wolf snarled, born to herd and contain humans. I can see something went wrong, I smiled wryly. The weaver grew too ambitious and trapped the worm within its lifeless web, the weasel answered. Confined and denied, the worm slowly went insane. Now, Gaia is dying, choked by the weaver and eaten alive by the worm, wailed the wolf. And the wild is not the one you should fight, she snarled. You were born to protect it. Then it turned and led the way. It didn't look much different from the other parts of the forest until you noticed the mounds, that is. There was something about the flattened hills that drew my full attention. They must have been bigger in the past. I could remember, and I felt dizzy. I'm going to go with I could remember. A memory stirred in my mind. No, it wasn't a memory. It was a feeling anchored in my chest, akin to the taste of ash in my mouth and the smell of smoke. Longing, sadness, resignation. A sense of sacredness. It filled me with a calm excitement, and when I closed my eyes, I saw a fire burning in the darkness. Cornell kneeled near one of the mounds, put his hands on it, and whispered a few words. I saw the ground open slowly like a mouth in the earth. I sighed. Let's do this. We took the severed head and body I'd wrapped up in sheets and put it in the hole. It closed slowly, and I could swear I heard the trees nearby sigh in anticipation. The wolf howled, and I could feel the hair on my hands rise. Welcome to your new life, the talking white weasel grinned. We have something else to show you. I'm going to wait, and they're going to tell me in their own time, so I'm not going to burn that willpower, so I'm going to run with them. Vision Quest. You're a cub, so you have special privileges, said the weasel. Pushta will grant you a vision. You must see to understand, said the wolf. Think carefully before you choose what to see. So I've got 3 choices here. I've got Place of Power, your future, your destiny. Wolf's Den, the present, the forest. Or Barrows, the past and your family. See, this is a hard choice, because I only get one vision from Pushta. So if I go with, let's weigh this out, if I go with my past, I will learn something about myself, which may help me understand my future. Right? So about the connection to Belarus and whatnot. The present and the forest, I feel, has something to do with actually saving Pushta. So that has a more immediate concern, the right now. And then there's the future and my destiny, which if I know what my destiny is, it might help me understand what I'm supposed to do now. So this is hard because there's no one answer here that's right. All of these can be right answers. It's just, what is it going to be? What is it going to be? So I think I'm going to go with, does the past teach me to not Food is hard, guys. If I learn about the past, it might help me to not make the same mistakes my family made in the past. The present tells me what I got to do right now. And showing me my destiny could guide me where I need to go. I think I'm going to go with the past. The tangled paths. It was hard to find the barrows, although I knew where they were. When I looked behind me, the path had disappeared. Pushja is friendly. I felt the Pushja playing with me, twisting paths, blocking my way with bushes and dead trees, and then suddenly opening a new path that was straight and full of sunshine. But I pushed on. Determined, I pushed on. Since the change, I had become acutely aware of how my body worked, and I remembered what humans were good at, running. Stubborn, relentless, long-distance running. Not as fast as a deer, not as nimble as a wolf, but steady and without rest, so I ran. Then I was there, and I'm actually in Glabro form right now, so I can probably do it even better. The barrows. I climbed the nearest hill. When I was at the top, I stumbled on something, a shape in the grass. A skull watching me from its bleached eye sockets. The buried past. There is a swirl. It starts deep within me, and then it expands. Everything is in motion, and there is no center anymore. I see a bird. There is a bird flying higher and higher until it sees a group of houses in a clearing. There is a wolf, her howl like a keen. The houses are mere huts. There is almost nothing that protects the people from the forest. Their clothes are rags. Their feet are bare. Their hair and long beards are unkempt. There are wolf cubs. Then there is blood. Then the howling begins, the mournful, blood-curdling keen of a mother who has lost her children. Watch, whispers the voice in my head. Watch and remember. But I cannot just stand by and watch. I want to act. I draw glyphs with the wolf cub's blood, and I pray for retribution. The forest wakes up, erupts with rage, and powerful furred bodies surge through the trees toward the village. The humans try to escape. They scream and beg for mercy. They try to protect themselves with fire. The Gru rise up, their talons red with blood, their eyes glazed with fury, and the fire is yanked from the hands of the villagers. The houses start to burn. The keening turns into a howl of joy. The Gru have my eyes, my face. They are my family. I am the blood of their blood. Ooh, getting high on the rage. And then it happens again. The humans return. They rebuild the village, this time stronger and better protected. The keening begins once more. Then we, the Gru, come down on them like the wolves of the fold. Ooh, I'm maxed out rage. Uh-oh. And again, new villages, new fires, more blood. And again. And again, seasons change, centuries pass. The keening continues, villages in the forest burn. Until one day there is only one Gru left in the family, and he slays his own kindred in the fit of his first rage. I know him. He is young, but I recognize someone in him. An old man I know. He used to tell me stories about the forest before my mother took me away. I stay there and I watch, but I can't move. My throat burns. My stomach is in knots. I want to scream, but I have no mouth. I feel the fire. I smell the blood. I see the large ash-gray wolf looking straight at me. Her eyes are golden. She weeps. It is your destiny, she says to me. It is your duty. It is you. Come with me, child. Be my fangs and claws. There is no one else to be my cub. Come to me, child. I will nurse you and I will lick your wounds. We will kill together. We will feast and we will be merry. The forest will grow. I looked at her and, perhaps for the first time, I saw her for who she was. Her pelt was marred with fire. Her eyes were smoking embers. Ash was falling from her heaving flanks. She looked old, ancient, seething with anger. She was one of the wolves from my vision, watching my grandfather from the darkness, waiting for the village to burn. But she was more than that. She was also the spirit of the forest, the Pushja herself, wounded, hurt, violated, and mourning all her children that humans had killed. At least, that's what I thought when I looked at her. The wolf mother looked back at me, and something in her eyes made me realize that she was sending me the prophetic dreams revealing my destiny. Join me, she pleaded. Only you can understand me. Only you. I went to her. And she accepted me. And I accepted myself. Hint updated. My grandfather was serving the wolf mother. Mission: stop the logging at any cost. And I finally understood who I was. Darkness fell again, and a bloody tide was loosed upon the world. This is going to get difficult trying to be a pacifist now. A lone howl pierced the silence like a single ray of moonlight in the darkness. Then there was another one, and another, and another, a chorus of voices, triumphant and joyful. I got healed up. When I opened my eyes, I was in a clearing. Around me there were wolves, huge, monstrous wolves, howling at the moon. I'm going to join them. I'm in Hispo form now. It's like more wolf. It's like a dire wolf form. The pain was overwhelming. My spine cracked and twisted. My knees and ankles broke and I fell on the ground. My jaw shattered and rearranged itself. My whole skin was on fire, ripping and sprouting fur. I howled in agony. When I rose, panting and spitting blood, I was Hispo, with the strong paws, mighty jaws, and mane of fur. More than wolf. Scary and monstrous. Instinctively, I changed and joined the choir. My voice was unsteady at first, but soon I found my own note, a unique addition to the chorus. Well, hello there, Cornell smiled at me, and welcome to the Sept. I have no idea what you're talking about, I snapped, angry and confused. For a werewolf, the pack is family, Cornell explained, and an alliance of packs united in a common goal is a sept. So there were 2 packs here. I realized then that there must be 2 packs there. I looked at Cornell. A great gray-eyed wolf changed into Cornell, and soon Pat and Kim joined him. We are the Winter Weasel Pack, said Kim. A white shadow settled on Pat's shoulder. I smelled musk and electricity. I looked at Olga. 3 of the monstrous wolves changed. Olga and Lisa stood up, human-looking again, their clothes rumpled. A yellow-eyed wolf by their side turned out to be Daniel. We are the pack of the Morning Wolf Mother, said Olga. They smelled of ash and tears, and for a moment I saw the wolf spirit among them. We are all Gaia's soldiers, said Cornell, in that we have no choice, but we can choose whom we fight alongside. See, now this is where it gets interesting, guys, because the vision quest I just took was more toward Wolf Mother, apparently. But with me trying to go pacifistic, I'm probably better off with Electric Weasel. Or Winter Weasel. Let's see here. So, we are all Gaia's soldiers, said Cornell, and that we have a choice. But we can choose whom we fight alongside. So, spiritual, why the animal spirits? Do I have to join a pack? Or, I had so many questions. I'm going to go with why the animal spirits. Does every pack have an animal spirit, I asked? How does that work? Such spirits are called patrons, and not all are animals, Lisa explained. And our pacts with them give us additional weapons with which to fight the sickness and corruption of the worm. The last word reeked of decay and burning oil. I had so many questions. I shook my head. You're from all over Europe, I noticed. Is this like a standard for a sept? I looked at Cornell. I didn't even know if that was a stupid question or a smart one. I looked at Cornell. Is far from the standard, but desperate times make strange bedfellows, he smiled sadly. Normally a sept is dominated by 1 tribe, maybe 2. There are at least a dozen tribes, Daniel interrupted. And I hope, Maya, that you will choose yours wisely. What about the moon? Why did I hear the moon whispering to me, I asked. Luna gave us rage. That is why she's important, Olga said, and that is why you'll never be able to touch silver again. What about the spirits? How does that work? The wolf casts a shadow and we call it the umbra. The world casts a shadow and we call it the umbra, said Lisa. And in the shadow, every living creature, every emotion, and every idea, every important object exists as a spirit. That's all you need to know for the moment. Do I have to join a pack? I asked, just to make sure. No guru can survive on their own, Cornell said with sympathy. Your old human life is over, but we will never abandon you. So, if I got all this right, I've been conscripted into an ancient war against the worm, I said slowly, trying to put it all together. And the moon gave me rage as a weapon, but I must avoid silver. And there's a whole secret world of spirits, and I have to join a pack and choose a tribe. Exactly, nodded Lisa. As for the tribe, there are 2 people who can mentor you now. Olga is from the Black Furies, an ancient tribe of women warriors, and Cornell is from the... Cornell is trying... sorry, my little dog just got all antsy because he wasn't getting attention. So he got his toy back. Is that what you wanted? I didn't realize I had it in my hand. And Cornell is from the Children of Gaia, and he's more a peace and harmony guy. Okay, so... as I stated at the beginning of this, my goal on this playthrough is to go pacifist, because I've never done that before. So, I'm going to go ahead and choose Children of Gaia for this. The Black Furies is what I've done in the past. They're kind of warrior women, Amazon style, and they're all about the fight for the most part. Okay, not every one of them is. They also have their own caste system from their moon aspect, but for the most part, they're more about action. The Children of Gaia, however, a tribe that believes in peace with humans, and that rage is a taint of the worm, not the righteous fury of Gaia. Hated by the other tribes for their reluctance to use violence and their celebration of pacifist human philosophies. And I'll just read this for you, the Black Furies. The almost all-female tribe focuses on atrocities committed against women. They know the mother is female and represent all the resentment and anger women harbor from thousands of years of male oppression. Hated by other tribes because they only fight for half of the planet's inhabitants. So again, I'm going to go, what was my family tribe? So we can kind of go a little further, because there's also other options we can take. The Shadow of Fenris, the Get of Fenris. Hey, what about my family's tribe, I asked. Lisa winced. Daniel sighed. Olga shook her head. What's the matter? I asked again. Your ancestors were the Get of Fenris, and no one here wants to have anything to do with that tribe, Cornell answered. They stand against everything we believe in. I have high rage, so I'm going to go with this. They surely aren't that bad, I asked. Are they? Get of Fenris are the most radical guru supremacists that ever marred the face of the earth, Kim scoffed. Like legit fascist werewolves. Some of them literally works for Hitler. So, Get of Fenris. A tribe of werewolf supremacists who celebrate the destruction of the human world that Father Fenrir promises at Ragnarok. Antagonistic to the other tribes to the extent that some whisper of worm taint. Hated and distrusted, many see them as another enemy in the war of the apocalypse. I had a right to know my legacy. Thank you for telling me, I said. I had the right to learn where I came from. For a moment, we were all silent. One thing is bugging me, I said. Why are there so many of you here? Suddenly, everyone in Biavoveja, am I doing it right? Biavoveja is a werewolf, or what? You know nothing, Cub, Olga laughed bitterly. A mere century ago, there were dozens of packs in these forests, but none of the old guard survived the 90s. Lisa shook her head. We have to start from scratch. Until you showed up, there were only 6 of us, and three of us not even local, Cornell pointed out. Two packs too small for their own good. I wanted to learn about the tribes and find an option that would really resonate with who I was. Yeah, I'm going to talk with Daniel because I think he is a Red Talon. I asked Daniel if I could join his tribe, but he didn't understand the question. I'm a Red Talon, he said, and that explained everything. Born exclusively from wild wolves, most of them hate every human alive for their millennial-long war against predators and wolves all over the planet. The other tribes hate them because they don't compromise and are blind to the suffering of the human half of the group. So I'm just going to go right here so he can explain it in his way. I want to make sure we got the full experience here. What are the Red Talons? I asked Daniel. It's the tribe of the Guru who were born as wolves, Daniel explained. We usually don't mix with others and we kill humans. But since I am the only one here, I decided that it was better to join the rest. It's better to have a pack than to be alone, I said. He nodded. There's always strength in numbers. I protect my folk better when there are more werewolves around. Your folk? Wolves. That was all I wanted to get to know from him, because I'm not going to go Red Talon, but I just wanted to make sure I did that angle so we could show it. I am going to talk to Kim first. Kim told me about the Bone Gnawers. Urban werewolves fighting for the disadvantaged and the marginalized children of the rat. They stand for the rights of the poor and the disenfranchised everywhere, making their homes in favelas, squats, and camps. Hated by the other tribes because they act like tame dogs, eating the scraps off the human table. Do you really have a rat as your tribe patron, I asked. Sure we do, answered Kim. It's a very good patron. Resilient. You want to be like a rat, always managing, always afloat. And this shit here, they gesture around, this shit comes from prejudice and from exclusion and from greed. Take greed and prejudice away, and 90% of the world's problems are solved. They sighed heavily. Now, tell that to the other guru, and they look down at you because you're a bone gnawer and they think that they are superior. Prejudice everywhere. I'm going to talk with Lisa. I asked Lisa about her tribe, but she inherited her Siberic legacy from her Buryat grandfather. She said she didn't know the proper legends, customs, and culture to join. Their hate, sorrow, and rage are deeper than any other tribes. I honestly don't know anything about the Sibirak. This is something that came up after I played, like I said, 25 years ago. Because their icy Siberian homeland is melting and decaying now. They are despised by their other tribes as half-breed loners who care only for themselves. I'm pretty sure it is a Russian word, but I just want them to explain it on here. So I asked, not knowing how to approach Sibirak. I mean, you're from Siberia. I hesitated and Lisa smirked. But the tribe name reminds me of something. Yes, Sibirak. She pronounced it differently, so it sounded like a Polish word. I'm sure that I've heard it before in a different context. In Russian, it means someone from Siberia, but in Polish, it has its own very unique, specific meaning, Lisa explained. It's a word for political prisoners exiled to Siberia, and there were tens of thousands of them. Which meaning did she prefer? Which meaning do you identify with, the Polish or the Russian, I asked. She smiled. My tribe name describes both of my legacies. My granny was a political exile, and my grandpa was a Siberian indigenous. I use it because it speaks the truth. That's all I need to hear from her right now. Thanks, that's all I need to know at the moment. So let's talk with Pat. Pat was a glasswalker, and her tribe was finding its niche in cutting-edge technological cityscapes among the strands of the Weaver's net. It sounded intriguing. We talked for a while. An adaptable tribe of urban human lovers who worship the Weaver, or at least freely use its tools to fight the worm. Hated by the other tribes for their willingness to abandon the old ways, they embrace the tools of the enemy. She didn't look like a werewolf at all. I wouldn't take you for a werewolf, you know, I said to Pat. She snorted. Why? I don't want to say poser. Because you look mostly harmless, I admitted. She shrugged. I am, and I don't expect to turn out a werewolf. And I didn't expect to turn out a werewolf either. I was a student, happy with my tablet and coding, and then boom, I was a guru. How did you meet Cornell? I was curious. I was in his first pack. We were both hanging out with the hacktivist crowd back then. When things were going south and he disappeared, I found him. How? I asked. Pat rolled her eyes. Girl, please. I'm a tech nerd, so I found him and talked him into coming back. How did you get your winter weasel to be your patron? I was curious. I caught it, or rather, I made sure it would have more to eat with me than alone. That's how you catch weasels. But it's a forest spirit, isn't it? I think it's a weasel, so it gets accustomed to live where there is food, and right now, it's the city. It hunts electricity spirits these days and feasts on them. That's kind of cool. So you are basically a city dweller, I observed. All glasswalkers are. It's our natural habitat. I feel quite out of place in the forest. Is it a tribe thing? That's what it is, she nodded. We use the Weaver to fight the worm, and the forest is not the Weaver's domain. And I happen to be quite fond of humanity. They have great potential. Finally, I stopped asking. I had to think over what I learned, but I didn't want to talk anymore. So I've got a couple options that I can go with here, but I was too exhausted to bug them with personal questions. Anyway, before you're admitted to a tribe, you need to prove yourself. What now? Okay. Prove myself? I was shocked. Hadn't I proved myself already? Enough already? Rite of passage. You went through your first change, Pat said. I was leaning on a tree nearby, and you know everything you need to know at the moment, but you have to go through the rite of passage. Daniel rubbed against my flank, excited. A vision quest, Kim winked at me. And since we don't have time for tests, we need you to solve a real problem, Olga snapped. Namely, we want you to find a way of ending this logging problem, Cornell said gently. So, would you like to do it? They all looked at me in anticipation. I took my time enjoying the moment. My body was buzzing with energy, ready to shift shape on the slightest sign of danger. My mind was clear. I knew exactly what I wanted to do. So I have some options here. We need to make the loggers fear nature. I need to talk to the spirits, or people needed to open their eyes. I'm going to go with... I could be an activist using my words. I can be an activist using my actions, or I can try the spiritual angle and see if I can get the spirits to help us. I have a very high spirit, so I think that's the way I'm going to go with this. We need to work with the spirits to succeed, I decided. Make the forest itself turn against the loggers. Something is rotten in Biovasia, Cornell commented, and I think that we should find and neutralize local forces that support the logging. Pat just laughed. We should create a diversion. There are too little of us for a direct confrontation with the loggers. I'll talk to the spirits and see what they can do to help us, I continued. If nature itself destroys the loggers' equipment, then there's no one to blame. Lisa looked thoughtful. I'll introduce you to the spirits you need to talk to. Daniel beamed. Spoken like a true Thurge. And again, Thurge. Those born under the crescent moon are mystics and seers, dealing with spirits, interpreting visions and omens. You were born under a crescent moon, weren't you, Maya? I looked up at him surprised. How did he know? My mom always told me that when she gave birth to me, she saw the crescent moon through the window, sharper and brighter than ever before. Okay, so we've done away with all this now. I am now a Thurge, and I have glory, honor, and wisdom. You're right, I nodded. How did you know? Guru born under the crescent moon are shamans and healers, said Lisa, just like you and me. A worthy Thurge always acts with wisdom, added Olga. Your place in the werewolf society will be determined by your renown. You can earn glory through defeating mighty enemies and succeeding at dangerous quests. You can earn honor by following your moral imperative and upholding the laws of the Guru. You can earn wisdom by acting efficiently and thinking well before you act. Your renown will change as you play, contributing to Maya's legend among the Guru. No pressure at all. That looks really good. Sorry, guys, I'm looking at something on our Discord right now. One of our clan members, his mom makes, she does embroidery and makes custom shirts and hats and stuff. And we have a group trip coming up to Vegas in 9 days. And a bunch of us are meeting out there from our gaming clan. And his mother made us some masks, because you still got to wear masks in all indoor areas in Vegas. And it has our clan logo on it, and it looks really good. Yeah, it looks really, really sharp. So, sorry about that interruption, but I just had to mention that because it looked really, really good. Okay, Olga must have sensed my confusion. Come on, we have a lot to discuss. Sorry, I had to look at something. Come on, we have a lot to discuss. She patted my shoulder, and we have to find your phone and wallet. So I followed her. I'm still in Hispo form. I had to tie up loose ends in my old life. Back to the beginning. I'm sitting on a bus. The sun streaming through the windows is making it hard to see. The narrow road cuts through a dense old forest. I remember doing something important, walking among the trees, looking for something, losing something I loved, gaining something unwanted. But then I'm fully awake and the memories scatter away. We're almost there, says Anya. I did some searching, and she looks at me from over her phone, and this place is amazing. The last primordial forest in Europe. I laugh. Anya, you're here. You wouldn't believe I'm not able to finish. I start to cough. I'm going to go with I spit blood. My throat is sore. My lungs hurt. I get up and shout to the driver, but feeling something sticky on my hands and torso, something stopping me. Spooters. I'm crawling with small spiders, thousands of them, weaving their cobwebs around me, around the seat, around everything. I'm going to fight. I try to fight them, but they're too small and there are too many of them, and after a few seconds I'm covered in cobwebs, unable to move. There's a hiss. Then slowly a long, dark, thin shape comes out of Anya's ripped neck, a black snake that reeks of rotten meat, acid, and oil. Don't fight, Maya. You're already mine, it says. Just like your grandpa. And then it kisses me. Ew. Chapter 5, The Plan. I woke up in my bed in the B&B and for a moment thought the whole werewolf business had been a dream. Then I looked at Anya's empty bed, exactly how she left it the morning we went to see the protests. She was dead. The reality of the situation hit me. Anya was dead. I'd killed her. I had to clean up my mess. I packed her things. Calmly, I packed all her things. I needed to stick to the plan. She said she used her favors with some network spirits and hack Anya's phone. It would log into some towers in Germany and the Netherlands, ping the social networks a few times, and before anyone noticed anything was amiss, there would be nothing to tie the disappearance to us. This is getting hard. Honor and wisdom are going up, though, but now I'm impaired. Breathing deeply, I cleaned the room. I looked into the mirror. Who had I become? I got this high rage, though. I'm afraid something bad's about to happen. I shrugged. Whatever the answer was, it was now Maya the werewolf's problem. Maya the student was dead. I took my bag and left. Okay, cool. So my last playthrough with this, when I hit that part, my rage was high and I didn't have enough willpower, and I ended up trashing the whole room. And then the cops showed up and shit. It was crazy. So... Okay, so before we continue, I'm going to take we've been doing this for 2 hours and 43 minutes. I am going to take a quick break. It'll just be a be right back. So hang on to your seats, and I will see you in a moment. Okay. And we're back. Had to get a little snack. Starting to feel a little peckish. Got some meat and cheese. So pardon if I talk with my mouth full. Everything according to plan. I dropped my bags in the camp and ran through the plan one more time. They expected me to act like a third, but we'd also discuss other plans, both more mundane. So we got some options here. We've got Ragabash, Trix, Subterfuge, Philodox, the judge, that's the neutral moon, or Thurge, spirits and rituals. Bless you. My Rhodesian is sneezing. I think we're going to go with the Thurge because I did go a very spiritual path. Although one day I do want to do a playthrough as a Ragabash and see how that goes. Okay, the Tempest. I needed to talk to the spirits of the forest, and for that I needed Lisa's help. Until I came along, she was the only shaman in the 2 packs, so she was happy to finally have an apprentice. I had a lot to learn. Before I could face the spirits, I had to attune to the Pushtya and learn the proper rites and meanings of addressing the spirits. Start getting some willpower back. Cool, my wisdom's at 5 now. After a few days of camping in the forest, fasting and meditating, Lisa said that I was ready. The spirits of the forest were waiting. Okay, so looks like I spent a day and a half. Ooh, make that 3 days in the forest. The sun was setting. We stood in the middle of the clearing and waited. I'm going to spill blood. I spilled my blood as a sacrifice to the spirits and called them by their secret names. We watched the blood sink into the ground and waited. First, there was a murmur, then a whisper among the trees, a rustle of the leaves in the quiet, windless night. I'm going to close my eyes. I closed my eyes and the smell of feathers and the night washed over me. Something whispered inside my skull, a voice like small claws scratching a bone. "What do you want?" it asked. "Send the wind and send the rain, O great forest," I chanted. "Drown their machines in the mud. Break the dead trees so they fall on their heads. We want justice." The rustling continued and the scratching became almost unbearable. "Yes," whispered the voice in my skull, "but there is a price." I was ready. I'm not, but I am ready for anything, I shouted. "Hunt us, young one. Find and catch us, and then we will help you." Then the presence was gone. Lisa smiled at me. "Go while the scent is fresh," she advised. "You can do it." I'm going to change. Looks great on camera. I think I'm going to go Hispo so I can... I'm going to go Hispo. I like the dire wolf form. My spine cracked and twisted, my knees and ankles broke, and I fell on the ground. My jaw shattered and rearranged itself. My skin was rippling and sprouting fur. I howled. When I rose, I was once more a wolf, scary and monstrous, with strong paws, mighty jaws, and a mane of fur. I sniffed the air. I was on all fours, my nose full of scents, my ears full of noises. I turned my head left and right, sniffing the air. I caught the scent and jumped toward a shape that emerged from the nearby bushes. Pushcha is friendly. It was a stag, pretty and lithe. A perfect vessel for the spirits, I stood there for a moment and then caught my scent and bolted. I ran after my prey. The stag was fast, but I was faster. I smelled its fear and heard its hooves beating the ground. With every pounce, I was closing the distance between us. I'm going to save that willpower. I was getting closer. I could smell its sweat, hear its heartbeat in the darkness. I'm going to push myself to the limit. I pushed myself to the limit. My muscles and lungs burned. There was no way that I was letting my prey get away. Suddenly, my prey dashed to a side, and for a moment, I almost lost it from my sight. Now I'm going to spend it. But there was too much at stake. I launched from the ground with my hind legs and landed on the stag's back. The hunt was over. I have to kill it because I don't have enough willpower. I dug my claws into my prey's flanks and tore at the throat. Warm blood filled my mouth, and I felt the stag go limp. And then it was only a heap of meat and bones. The spirit escaped. Something moved behind me, something big. I'm going to go Krynos. Pain hit me like a wrecking ball. Every bone in my body breaks and moves and resets. I roar in agony. Panting and growling, I rise and rise. I'm an 8-foot-tall killing machine. Well, at first, I thought it was a bison standing there with its head lowered. Then it straightened and stood on its hind legs. Ivy was wrought around its arms and its eyes. Maya, it said in a voice, it's you. I hit the forest straight in the chest with all my weight. The monstrous bison slaps the side of my head. I push at it with all my might, and I feel it stumble. Ooh, I'm getting low. It's a hard fight, but I don't stop. We fight, and nothing else matters. Suddenly, the beast collapses and almost crushes me. I barely escaped. My body reset after itself to the familiar shape. Bones broke and fused again. Muscles and sinews moved under my skin. I cried and thrashed. Then I was human again, with my keen eyes, nimble fingers, and a silver tongue, a wolf in sheep's clothing. I rolled away at the last moment. Good, back to loyal. What pushed you? Woo! Z, yeah, I'm trying to do a complete playthrough. It usually only takes a few hours, and I'm probably like 2/3 of the way done with it, if not more. So I'm coming up toward. I think I'm coming up toward the final battle. You fought well, it said. Oh, let me go back. I rolled around on the ground and stood up. The spirit was looking at me with its dark, inscrutable eyes. You fought well, it said, its voice a clamor of birds now. We will help you. Cool, my wisdom is shooting up like crazy. 6 wisdom, 3 honor, 1 glory. I bowed my head. Thank you, I said. When I looked up, the spirit was gone, but I knew the Pushja was watching and waiting for my sign. A moment of triumph. I couldn't wait for the set meeting that morning. Closing the deal with the spirits was my rite of passage, and I knew I did great. I was unstoppable. We met soon after the sunrise on the same clearing where I awoke for the first time as a guru. Lisa looked at us all and smiled. Our patrons were looking at her expectantly, so she stepped towards the center of the clearing. I am the third of this sept, and I am here to make sure we do things the right way. She turned to me and I held my breath. Maya, come forth. You are a cub who seeks recognition as an adult? I am, I answered solemnly. Are you an applicant to a tribe? Lisa asked again. I am. Who speaks for the cub? Asked Olga, stepping forward. I do, Lisa answered. I am Zorya of the Siberik, third of the Morning Wolf Mother pack. I observed the cub on her mission, and I am here to tell the story. I'm going to go with secret names cool. I wonder if they all had cool secret names. They probably had. I love the ancient spiritual vibe of it all. Has the cub passed her challenge? Asked Olga. I knew how it all happened, but I held my breath nevertheless. She succeeded, was the answer. She fought bravely against overwhelming odds, and she's succeeded. Have you chosen your name? Lisa turned to me. My new secret name. Suddenly, I remembered my grandfather talking about his old friends. He never used their real names. They were always Thunder or Gray or Needle. I'd always thought it was a guerrilla thing, some kind of war names. Now I wasn't so sure anymore. How to capture my whole life, my aspirations, my personality, my heritage in one name. I cleared my throat. So I have 4 choices here. Got Mist, a name with more than one meaning. Wieczora, which was Polish for gale. Pine, a tree in the forest. Or Falca, which was Latin for a female falcon. I am partial to, because this is Maria Borodich is Polish by heritage, I'm more partial to going with Wieczora. So I'm gonna go with that. My name is Wieczora, a gale, I answered, thinking about the wrath of the forest spirits, unseen and yet impossible to ignore. Here comes the hard one. Choosing the tribe was another matter. So I'm going to go with what I originally intended, and I am going to do a Child of Gaia for this walkthrough. Rainbows and Unicorns achievement on Steam, because I've never done a Children of Gaia playthrough. After getting to know both Olga and Cornell better, I decided to join the Children of Gaia. Cornell agreed to mentor me. Only one thing remained to end the ceremony and make me a full-fledged guru. I had to join a pack. As my fate had already been tied to the Wolf Mother, I chose that as my patron and joined Olga's pack. There was no love lost between me and Olga, but I was a valuable addition to her pack, and she was good enough leader to recognize it. See, and I didn't have the choice here of going with the Winter Weasel. That's probably the direction I would have wanted to go, because they didn't have a Thurge. So I could have been an ally to their pack, and they seem to be a little more on the pacifistic side, which is what I was trying to do for this playthrough. Unfortunately, my choices previous made this happen. Again, there's like so many thousands of different angles this game can go on different playthroughs based on how you choose things. So it's just how it turns out. So just like life, you know, your actions have consequences, and you can't take them back. I just have to move forward in the story. According to the ancient rites, Lisa painted the mystical glyph of my tribe on my sternum. It disappeared after a moment, but whenever I closed my eyes, I could feel its warm touch between my breasts. Wieczora of the Children of Gaia, thirds of the Morning Wolf Mother pack. Welcome to our sept, she said solemnly. Howls rose toward the sky. They sang about ancient laws of war, status, and secrecy. I remembered only a few. Combat the worm wherever it dwells and wherever it breeds. Submit to those of higher station. Respect those beneath you. The veil shall not be lifted. Good. 4 honor now. And my rank jumped to Cleath. I threw my head back and howled with my sept. I was a cub no more. I was ready to tell my own stories, to earn my own place in the pack, to howl my own songs. I think we're coming to the final battle, guys. Such a great game. The story in this is just amazing. It's just so freaking cool. Chapter 6, The Storm. So, before we get started on this, just a quick recap. Rage is at 4 of 5, which means I have high rage. My willpower is low, 1 of 5. My health is low as well. It's July 1st, moon's in the last quarter. I am currently in Hamid form. We've already been through that. My name is Mayo Wieczora Borodich. 24 years old. I'm an American student. I was born a human. I am a shaman of the tribe, a Thurge. My rank is Cleath, a young guru, not yet of any significant rank, so I'm like just a young member of the pack, but no longer a cub. Part of the Children of Gaia, a tribe that believes in peace with humans and that rage is a taint to the worm, not the righteous fury of Gaia. Hated by the other tribes for their reluctance to use violence and their celebration of pacifist human philosophies. And my pack is the Morning Wolf Mother. For glory, I am at 1 because I fought that battle against Pushcha. For honor, I'm at 4, so I'm growing there, and my wisdom, as befitting a Thurge, is the highest, and I'm at 6. So that's where we're at here. So let's continue on. Dust to dust. It was one of those blistering summer days when the asphalt melts, the grass withers, and the air smothers those brave enough to step outside. Despite the heat, it felt like the whole village was out at the funeral. Now, it's funny that they use this terminology in the game because, again, we looked up just a little while ago about, like, the average temperature in, like, June through August in this part of Poland, and it's, like, in the 70s Fahrenheit. So they're talking about blistering heat, and it's like, really, guys? So me down here in Houston, it's August, and it's still in the 90s. I stood there, surrounded by sweaty bodies, looking at the rosaries they clutched in their fists. There was nowhere to run. For a brief, chilling moment, I thought I saw Anya's face among the crowd, but no. I buried her in the barrows myself, and nobody there even knew that she was dead. It was someone else's funeral. Anya was not the reason we gathered in the churchyard. The body of a hunter had been found in the forest. The circumstances of the death were unclear. Who cares? It was our doing, my doing, and the death had tipped the scales. Since the deaths, I'd started seeing shadowy figures, their faces flickering in the corner of my eye. Duke, what are you eating? Sorry, my dog was just... You know how it is when a dog starts eating something off the ground and you're wondering what it was. Okay, well, he found something. Since the deaths, I'd started seeing shadowy figures, their faces flickering in the corner of my eye. Were they just filaments of my imagination or my own pack of hungry spirits following me, waiting for my mistake? I could feel the tension searching around me. This death, this funeral had pushed the community, already weary and frightened by the recent disappearance of an activist in the forest, to the edge. The press had swarmed the funeral like flies. They were reporting on how the illegal logging was a danger to both the ecosystem and human lives. The police were watching the crowd with disinterest as they leaned lazily against the trees. Suddenly, Puszcza Białowieża had become politically charged and the hottest place to be in Poland. And it wasn't only local politicians and activists from both sides who'd caught wind of the commotion. The Minister of Environment himself had driven to Białowieża to attend the funeral. He was standing next to the priest conducting the ceremony. Why is that yellow? That's weird. Surrounded by police and what looked like a handful of bodyguards. The coffin went down and the crowd stirred. Everyone started lining up to throw a handful of dust on the coffin or put flowers on the grave. I got swept up by the crowd and found myself face to face with Bartek. There should be another coffin here because we both know that she's dead. He looked into my eyes. I really liked Anya, you know. It all has something to do with you, he said, and I will find out what. I'm not going to even answer him. Excuse me. Bartek looked me in the eyes. Funny thing, it's like all the strange things started happening as soon as you all came here. I looked over his shoulder at the crowd. It was clear that many people felt the same as he did, and the minister knew how to use that sentiment. I watched in disbelief as the priest handed him the mic. After 30 seconds of listening to that pompous ass, I thought I would vomit. He repeated some platitudes, but it was clear he'd only come to show his face and tighten the leash on the local logging companies. The crowd listened, silent. I'm going to go ahead and de-escalate my rage just a little bit so I can have some more control here. I realized the conflict was only going to escalate and in a big part, and it was our doing, but it was too late to back down. But with the forest on our side, we can end the logging anytime. I'm going to go with defend ourselves. There had been a storm the previous night, but when the final showdown started, the sun was at its most merciless and the world was almost white with heat. The air smelled of herbs, bark, and tree sap. Insects buzzed lazily in the high grass, stunned by the summer sun. They're setting up the protest. The day was stifling as we set up the protest. The whole clearing was decorated with banners, and we all had our placards. The banner we'd hung on the National Park headquarters the week before was just a warm-up. Wood is the enemy of the forest was our main slogan, but there were many more. Let's see. I wrote something constructive. Let's go with that. Make the whole Puszcza a national park, demanded my sign. It was a viable solution. The whole pushta would be protected and people could still earn money on tourists. There weren't so many of us, but everyone in the clearing knew why they were here. The pushta was watching us. Every time a gust of wind was bringing the wet smell of the forest to my nostrils, I felt her strong, steadfast presence. She knew that we were doing everything in our power to save her. Heavy clouds were hanging low over the trees. The spirits were gathering to sport us in the final moments. Since I came to Białowieża, I'd been so sure that I was following my destiny. But was the future set in stone? Was there even a destiny to follow? When I stood there between my friends and my enemies, I saw more than one path ahead of me, and I was not sure which one I would take. The pressure was almost palpable, and tempers were flaring. Everyone knows what to do? Olga asked, looking at my pack. I'll keep the security guards occupied, nodded Lisa. And I'll guard the pushta's perimeter, growled Daniel. The weasels were in their positions among the protesters, as agreed. That left the cops to me. So, I don't think we can negotiate with them. I'm going to have to keep my eyes on them. I'll keep my eyes on the cops, I said, and we'll make sure that the activists are safe. Yeah, that's the plan, Olga nodded with a bitter expression. The cops were gathering. The police were nervous, huddled in groups and shouting at each other and everyone who was in their way. Something was up. It was apparent that they were waiting for something. It reached the boiling point when the minister arrived for a photo op. We could use that. It attracted some attention. I had a bad feeling. My stomach turned when I saw the black SUVs. I had a bad feeling. I felt my pulse rise. I knew he was in for a nasty surprise. The reporters closed in on him, shooting uncomfortable questions about the legality of the logging and his forestry policy. In hindsight, you could argue that what happened next set a chain of events in motion that had life-changing consequences for many. But it all started earlier, but change didn't happen just like that. But at the moment, I didn't know what. I'm going to go with the first option. But the truth was, it all started much earlier. When Olga decided to go back to Białowieża, when Cornell first heard about the logging, when my dreams made me question my destiny. The members of my SEP had already moved to their positions, and I also had my part to play. The minister was bad news. With him at the seam, everything will get harder, I sighed, pointing at the minister. Olga nodded. We're going to have to regroup. The activists, humans and werewolves alike, listened as we told them what had happened. The atmosphere was tense. We started our preparations. We prepared ourselves for the worst-case scenario. Okay, let's move, I heard someone shout. Move it, people, move it. You know what to do. And they did. There was a lot of laughter and friendly pushing, chains clinking, and some people darted up the trees to seat themselves in the branches. I was assigned to the human chain. Hey, I heard, get those arms behind you. That's it. Attaboy. It hurts, moaned a man's voice. Next time, do some yoga beforehand, huh? That's it, people. Open your heart so you can hold your wrists behind your back. I threaded my arms through the arms of the people to my left and right and then grabbed my wrist behind my back. It was tight on my shoulders, hot and very sweaty. We sat down one long human chain and watched the loggers and police as they approached, and then stopped. We didn't move. A tense silence filled the clearing. My honor increased. The talk started there and then. I could see that the minister was an apt politician, that he could smell a deal for himself in it all. But I didn't really care. We'd gotten what we wanted. We started to talk. Peace talks. When the talk started, we weren't alone. The sudden storm that evening made us all huddle in makeshift tents, and the forced closeness helped us to break the ice. Many old rotten trees were toppled by the wind, and we used the occasion to move the discussion from trees being cut down to whether fallen trees should be removed. So we started talking, and it became big. I don't know what tipped the scales in the end. The press, the international attention, the local interests coming together, our passion. Finally, an agreement was within our reach, but the talks weren't easy. The state forests, the woodworkers, the local population, ecologists, scientists, activists, everyone wanted something. I was by no means an expert, but I wanted to play my part in the proceedings. My honor increased. So I decided to observe the talks and make sure everything was okay. The spiritual side of the situation interested me, and I wanted to make sure that both sides had good intentions. The talks went on and on. Everyone at the scene had their own opinion and their own point of view, and I had mine. In the middle of it all was, of course, the spruce bark beetle, a dangerous infestation and a convenient excuse for the logging. The beetle had always been a part of the forest ecosystem, pointed out one of the ecologists. But the recent droughts made the spruce more susceptible than ever, the foresters countered. We have to cut down the trees to stop a total disaster. I saw one problem with this approach. Oof. This is true, but there is more at stake. They cut the wrong trees. The Pushta would manage. I think we need the trust in the Pushta. I'm going to spend my willpower. The Pushta would manage as she always had. It was a primordial forest and had its own mechanisms for dealing with infestations. That was how it renewed itself. Excuse me. You fetishize the forest, scoffed one of the officials. People cultivated it for hundreds of years and it cannot survive without our help. He's right. You want to take our forest from us, a group of locals attacked the activists. You're not from here and you tell us how to live our lives. The problem was that human intervention unbalanced the ecosystem. If they pushed it any further, they'd lose all that made the Pushta unique. Opinions clashed, tempers flared, but eventually new, constructive ideas started to emerge. At least one of them caught my attention. So we have the whole area should be turned into a national park, international observers could help, or winning the local populace was essential. Technically all three, but national park, they could still log it. We know that. I'm going to go with winning the local populace. It struck us that if we won the local populace to the cause, everything would be easier. If the people saw the forest, not the wood, as their local treasure, preventing the loggers from breaking the law would be much easier. It was a long and hot day. I rubbed my eyes. I was so tired I could barely keep them open. My head was spinning. But I kept going. What was a little heat stroke when so much was at stake? Of course, they had to make it dramatic. There were cameras, there were lights, there were negotiations lasting all day long. We reached the first draft of an agreement literally at sunset. I had no doubts. They'd only decided to stop the logging because they realized that there was something in it for them. But at that moment, I just looked at the sky and laughed. I felt overwhelming relief. And then my exhaustion caught up with me. I found a quiet spot, sank to the ground, and fell asleep. Epilogue, quiet before the storm. We're wrapping it up now, guys. The next morning. Cheering of the crowd woke me up. Against willpower? We'd won. The Pushta was safe, at least for the time being. People were excited, antsy, full of emotions. If the loggers hadn't left, they probably would have charged them. I was glad we avoided open conflict. We'd avoided a battle which I considered my greatest victory. We all needed to blow off steam, so we partied. Soon we were all dancing, talking, singing, and in some cases making out in the shadows. I had to stop someone from making a fire. I mean, for fuck's sakes, we're in the middle of a forest during a drought. But my friends didn't join in the festivities. They just sat on the logs, looking at the humans with weary eyes. I found my pack. We sat in the shadows far from the humans. Look at them, murmured Olga. Loud, messy, stupid. Tomorrow this place will look worse than if we let them do the logging. Look on the bright side. The trees are still standing, I smiled, and we'll pick up the trash tomorrow. I'm not here to pick up their trash, growled Olga, but there was a warmer glint in her eyes as she looked at the trees we'd saved. Olga looked at them for some time. Well, maybe with time they'll turn this energy into something more useful. We'll have to wait and see. I smiled, satisfied. Time would tell who was right. under the trees. We gathered in the clearing in which I'd first woken up as a Gru. Lisa stood in the middle of the clearing, the wolf and the weasel by her side. Now, she said, looking at Cornell and Olga, you two, you need to solve this today. Olga nodded. There was sadness in her eyes. You were right, she said to Cornell. I'm sorry. That night was long and full of hope. Olga and Cornell reached... Oh, sorry, that's the click. Olga talked with Cornell for a very long time, and later that night they asked us to join them. They decided they wanted to lead our pack together as a leading pair, just like in real-life wolf packs. Lisa and our patrons made sure that we did right by Guru law and the Sept matters were resolved. But it didn't cover everything that had happened that summer, though, so some consequences would have to unravel with time. Despite everything that had happened, Bartek managed to see another day. He joined forces with his father and became a true enemy of the forest. We would kill them both sometime later. But it was all still ahead of me for now. For now, it was still all ahead of me. For now, the first chapter of my life was coming to an end. Spend some willpower? Oh, gain some willpower. It could all end badly. It could all still end well. I achieved my destiny. The paths ahead of us split like branches, and the branches turned into twigs, and the twigs into leaves. The forest could survive. The forest could die. But I alone couldn't change the future. There were too many solutions, too many roads, too many agents. I wasn't special, I thought. I was just a leaf that came and went, one of many. The quiet before the storm. Your story is almost over. This might be a good time to take a last look at your character sheet. Let's go ahead and do that. So we've been through all that. Our honors at 6 and our wisdoms at 6. Glory is at 1 again. We didn't do much fighting, but we fought this battle in another way, and I do believe that I've accomplished the goal I set out to do with this playthrough. So I'm very happy with that. The clearing was empty and full of sunlight. The harvesters were gone, leaving the scars of their tracks behind. People were cleaning up the campsite, making plans to turn the temporary protest site into a permanent tent town. The air was sweet and smelled of coming rain. The upturned soil smelled of turf and sweet aroma of decay. There would be a storm later that day. I could feel it. A faint, sharp layer of electricity surrounded the wetness. I smiled. I liked my new sense of smell. This is not the end, said the ash-gray wolf. I assume you know that. Of course I knew. It was just a momentary break, a truce that both sides needed to regroup and reinforce. Yeah, I know, I sighed, looking around. There was a squirrel somewhere. I could smell it. I wanted to chase it, to run, to feel the thrill of adrenaline rushing through my veins. It mocked me from the branches above, squeaking curses in its squirrel tongue. I couldn't see it. I was Lupus, the wolf form. I doubled down in pain. My arms and legs cracked and twisted. My skull fractured and reset itself in a different shape, fragments of bones crawling under the skin. My skin was ripping and sprouting fur. I howled in agony. When the pain subsided, I was Lupus, a wolf, seeing the world in smells and sounds. So I ran just for the thrill of it. You have finished Heart of the Forest. Cubs, gather round the fire and listen to the story of Maya Borodich. Sorry, dry throat. Cubs, gather round the fire and listen to the story of Maya Borodich, known among the Gru as Witchura of the Children of Gaia, thirds of the Morning Wolf Mother Pack. She always honored her pack with her packs with spirits. Maya managed to negotiate a fragile peace and stop the harvesters, but would it hold? The first protests against the logging of Biavoja Forest took place in 2016. The game was loosely inspired by those events. All characters and events depicted in the game are entirely fictitious. Well, that's that. I hope you all enjoyed it. That was a pacifist Children of Gaia playthrough of Werewolf the Apocalypse, Heart of the Forest. Definitely one of the best text-based role-playing games I have played. It's available on Steam. It is a great game. It's not that expensive, I recall. Let me check the store page. It's $14.99. It goes on sale as well. Amazing game. I really hope that you guys enjoyed this playthrough. If so, please give a follow. I'll also be posting this on my YouTube channel, so that way you can see it if you ever want to go back and do it. I will be playing this through again in the future with different playthrough styles. I'll pick a different pack. I'll probably want to do maybe a Bone Gnaw Ragabash or a Glasswalker, something like that. We'll try something different, see how that turns out. But really hope you enjoyed it because this is a fun game to play. And it only took about 3.5 hours to do it. 3 hours, 20 minutes. So pretty cool stuff. So I'm going to kill the stream here for the day, guys. Thank you very much for watching. Appreciate your support. And y'all have a nice Sunday.